I was born on July 7th, 1936, and we were living at the time on Bryan Avenue, down off State Street, close to South High School. And I remember my mother telling me that the day I was born it was really hot, middle of July, 7th of July. And the doctors were sweating, and it was just a really hot day. But that's where I was born. I had an older sister, Helen, who was 10 years older than I was, and then an older brother, Perry, who was 6 years older than I was. 7 years older than I was. And before I was born, my mother had a set of stillborn girl twins. They were born stillborn. So there would have been 5 kids if they had lived. But I was the last, 1936. And I lived on Bryan Avenue, which is just a little humble bungalow down there. My dad's name was Adolf. When I was a kid, I used to be nervous about telling who my dad's name was because it was during World War II. You know, Adolf Hitler. I was always kind of skimpish about using the word Adolf, but anyway, that's a very common Swedish name. And he was, his father was born in Stockholm, Sweden, came across the ocean on a boat, and joined the church. Well, before he left, he was a member of the church, and he came across. And when he came across the ocean, his wife-to-be also came with him, but they weren't married. They were just friends. After they got here, they got married. And her name was Paulina. So Adolf and Paulina Soderberg were my parents. Or were my grandparents, yeah. We had a good relationship in our family. I don't remember there being a lot of fighting or arguing or anything like that. Of course, I was a lot younger than they were, but we always got along and enjoyed holidays together. And like a typical Soderberg, we enjoyed Christmas more than anything. We didn't make a big deal of birthdays. Birthdays came and went. I don't remember ever having a birthday party with a cake. And it was just the way my mother and dad did things. But Christmas, we went all out. We had a wonderful time. I remember one time my sister wanted to have a little sister. And I remember being home and I saw her curling her eyelashes one day with those little things, you know. And she said, "Bob, come here, I want to do this on you." So she did, and I remember the eyelashes sticking in the top of my head. Helen was always a lot of fun. She liked to do things, very outgoing, lots of friends, did a lot of dating. Perry was, as I say, 6 years older than I was, and he was a very crafty, like your mom. He could do anything, make anything, build anything, and I think that's where Amy gets it from on that side of the family. And he did a lot of things. He was the first one to teach me how to fish, and he taught me how to ski. My brother and I had a good relationship. We used to, when I was, during the summertime, he and his friends used to go up to the Uintas and fish up in the lakes, hike in. And he'd take me with him all the time when we go, and that's where I learned how to fish up there. And then one time, the first time I ever caught a fish was up Parley's Canyon. Now Parley's Canyon, when I was little, was just a 2-lane highway. It was not a freeway. And there was a railroad track that went along the side. And the creek was right there. So you could just walk off the highway and you could right there and fish at the creek. And he showed me how to do it. And he said, now, one thing you have to remember is that trains come along on the track once in a while. And when they do, sometimes you realize they're there. And one time the train came along and I was sitting on the bridge and I just jumped in the water so the train wouldn't hit me. And then skiing, he was an excellent skier. In those days they didn't have safety bindings. And you would take straps and just literally wrap your boot to the ski so it'd be really soft. But they weren't safety bindings. If you fell, your foot went wherever it went and your ski went with you. So, yeah, when I was in the 4th grade, I had a strep throat. Now strep throat they call it strep throat because the strep is the bacteria that causes it. It's not virus, it's a bacteria. Had a strep throat, and then it turned into scarlet fever, which was quite common in those days. It's to be in the 40s. And I got real sick, and it had the strep bacteria would attack the heart, and attack my heart and cause a heart murmur. And then they called it rheumatic fever because it kept coming back. And I can remember, and when I had rheumatic fever, they put me right in bed. The bedroom was right next to the bathroom, but I wasn't supposed to get out or walk or anything. My mother would have to carry me from my bedroom into the bathroom to use it or to take a bath. And by the way, we never had any shower in our house. There were always bathtubs, no showers in our home. We had bathtubs. So all of our cleansing was done in the bathroom. Anyway, so I had this rheumatic fever, and it kept coming. I'd get better, and then I'd go out and sneak and play and do something, and overtax my heart. So, and then I don't remember the year, but it would have been about 47, 48. Penicillin was discovered, and penicillin was the very first good antibiotic, which killed the strep bug that caused strep throat and scarlet fever. And as soon as they put me on that antibiotic, it cleared up. It left me with a little defect in my heart, and all through the junior high years and even into my senior years, I was restricted from activities until I got to be a sophomore in high school. And then I could go and do whatever I wanted. I loved to play sports. I loved to play football, basketball, and ski and fish. Those were the main things. And my brother was my fishing partner. During World War II, you were rationed. There wasn't a lot of metal available, so they didn't make any trains or model trains and things like that. And during the Christmas, I can't remember what year it was. We were downtown on State Street and came by the window at Christmas time, and in the window there was a train going around a circle, and I'd never seen a train like this. And it had two rails. Most of the trains in those days had three rails. This had two, which was kind of a big breakthrough. My dad thought that was the neatest thing. So I saw this train, and I just went bananas. I said, boy, isn't that neat? Look at that cattle car, and look at it has smoke coming out of the smokestack and so forth. And I was just jabbering away, and Dad said, hey, we can't afford it, so don't worry about it. We just can't do that now. And then on that Christmas morning, the train was there. So that's the happiest Christmas I ever had. When I walked in and saw that. And my brother and Dad loved it too. They never had trains when they were little. Come to find out, right after I got excited, a few days later, Dad went in and bought the train, and they took it up to his office on the Kearns building down in Salt Lake, Kennecott Copper. And they unpacked it and set it up, make sure it would work okay in the office. So they became kind of a partner with me all through those years with the train. So that was kind of our hobby. We built a big table downstairs with mountains and tunnels, but Dad and Perry all were part of that. They helped build it. So that was what we did when I was younger, like that. High school was great. It was great because I could be active now. Because I was in junior high, I had to take the roles in the gym because I wasn't supposed to be out doing things. But when we got to high school, that was off. So, but I had a lot of good friends. We did everything together. We'd play basketball. We'd go on trips. We'd go on camps, camp out, various places. We used to go fishing together. But that's what we mostly did. And then this would have been about 1952, 53, right in through there. This is when I met Mom. I went with another girl on a hayride. You know what a hayride is? It's a big trailer pulled by horses. And it was in the fall. It's cold, and it's straw. And I was sitting with this state of mind, and I saw her for the first time. And she was with another fellow. And I said to myself, that's the girl I'm going to marry. It was true. I told myself that. And then so and we did a lot of dating. The first date we ever went on was she was 14 and I was 16. Of course, that wouldn't happen today with the church, would it? But I was driving. I had my license, and we used to do everything as a group. It was always a group of us. On Sunday nights, we'd have firesides, and all my friends and their dates, and just we weren't dating. We were just in a group, and we'd get together on Sunday night. Then afterwards, we'd go for rides and drive around the block, drive around the town. And of course, when I was in high school, 2 of my years in high school, that's when I went down to Bryce Canyon and had a job as a dishwasher at Bryce Canyon. Bryce Canyon and Grand Canyon and Zion Canyon were all called Utah Parks Company. And they were owned by Union Pacific Railroad. So when you applied there. And if you were hired, they would assign you to one of the 3 parks. I was assigned to Bryce Canyon. And the first time I'd actually ever been away from home. My dad took me down to the depot, and Mom came there and stood with my dad and I got on the train. I was sad to leave her. And we went all night, all through the night, down to a little town just outside of Cedar City, where we got off the train. And the first thing I got off the train, the guy asked me, says, "Where's your drums?" I said, "What do you mean, where's my drums?" On my application, I had put that I played the drums, and what I had done, all through those years when I was in bed, I'd listened to all the music, the big bands and so forth, and I'd play it on boxes with brushes and so forth. So I considered myself I had the drums, which I really hadn't. I'd sat at a set of drums once because my cousin played the drums. Anyway, I got down there and they said, "Where's your drums?" I said, "Well, we hired you to be a drummer in the band." I said, "Well, I don't have any." He said, "Well, we'll find some." So the fellow that was in Bryce Canyon the year before he was from Richfield, Utah. He got polio and couldn't come back. So they sent a truck from Bryce Canyon up to Richfield and got the drums and brought them back to Bryce Canyon and said, "Okay, we got your drums, so now you can start." So I did know kind of how to put them together, but that's where I started drumming. And so I just taught myself, listening to records. My major hobby and source of income all through high school and also all through university. I played in all kinds of bands, and big bands, small bands, everything. And that's where I learned my love for jazz and that kind of music. And when I was growing up, Helen and Barry both liked the things of the day. Helen used to play the piano, and the stars of the day were Bing Crosby, Joe Stafford. Can you remember any other?
Diana Shore.
Dinah Shore, not Diana. And so in the house we always had music going on. Sometimes my sister would play, but we'd have the radio. We didn't have TV, but we'd always have music going. Music of the day, just like you have pop music. Well, that was our music of the day. Big bands, things like that. Well, when I first went to the University of Utah, I did well in the biological sciences in this school. And there was a course called physiology in high school. This is when I was a senior. And I loved it so much, and I thought, geez, I think I could go into medicine. That's kind of where I decided to go. And so I always did well in the biology and in zoology and so forth. And so that's where I decided, and I talked to my own dentist about it and got interested there, and that's where I got interested in it. And so when I went up to U, I enrolled in pre-med. There wasn't a pre-dent, it was just pre-med. For those going into medicine and dentistry, they were all together. We took the same courses, those going into pre-med, and they were tough courses, really hard courses. And the first ones I went into, the first course I took, I was a freshman at the U. And it was a real tough course. And I was in there with a bunch of guys who were all pre-meds, and we were very competitive, and I just barely got through. And so I thought, geez, I don't know if I can do this. So I decided to myself, well, maybe I better go into dentistry instead. That's where I made my decision when I was about a freshman in college. So then I started work. I still had to take all the same classes as the pre-meds did, We had to take chemistry and physics, math, comparative all the life sciences. And so I took a bunch of zoology classes, and then you had to apply it at dental school, and it was competitive. You know, you're applying against, and there's no dental school in Utah. There was no dental school in any of the Intermountain states, but I knew that there were 3 dental schools on the West Coast, and one of them was the University of Washington. And my brother's friend was a dentist, and I went and talked to him, and he went to the University of Washington, and said, well, that's what I'll do. So anyway, to make a long story short, my grades were not good at first, but by the time I graduated, they were over a 3.4 or 3, something like that. But I did all the good grades in my junior and senior year, and was accepted because I had a bachelor's degree. So I was accepted into dental school, and then went on with my career. The year we got engaged was, you know, we were dating all through college. I joined the fraternity at the U, Sigma Chi fraternity. You ever heard of the song "The Sweetheart of Sigma Chi"? Well, that's a famous song. One of the major original fraternities in all the colleges. And anyway, I didn't get her a diamond, but before my senior year, if you were in a fraternity, you had a pin, since you were in that fraternity. And if you wanted to go steady or pre-engagement, you would pin the girl. Well, I gave Mom my pin. So it was a white cross for Sigma Chi. And then anybody that got pinned, we would go to and she was a member of the Kappa sorority. The whole Sigma Chi group, we walked up the street to the Kappa house. And I had to get a dozen roses, red rose, and 1 white rose. And we went into the Kappa house, and all the Sigma Chi's that were there sung the song, "The Sweetheart Sigma Chi." And then I gave her, and they all went up and gave her a white rose, 11 of them. Then I gave her the 1 red rose, and then we were officially pinned. And so all through my senior year, we were pinned. In other words, we were planning to be engaged, but we didn't get engaged officially until just before my senior year at the university. When I went to get the diamond, my brother was already married. Of course, my sister was married. And my brother had several friends that were in the jewelry business. And I said, will you come help me pick out a diamond? So he did, he went with me. And I went down to the Benion's Jewelry was the name of it, on Main Street. And we went in there and looked at the diamonds, and I found the one I liked, and Perry thought that's a good one, and so he helped me pick it out, and I got the diamond, and so I decided when I was going to give it to her. And the night we were going to go, we went to a little restaurant called the Dollhouse, which was a little family restaurant that was close. Actually, it was close to the place where I was born, down by Bryan Avenue. But it was on State Street. I went in there and I had it in my pocket. I was trying to figure out how I was going to do this. And so after dinner, it was the night before Thanksgiving. And so we went into the driveway and parked there, and I took the diamond out and asked her if she'd marry me. And she said yes. The wedding day was really, really fun. We had a good time. And of course we had a big reception, and she had a long dress, and I think she had 6 or 7 bridesmaids, all of our friends, and all of her friends. And we were married in the Bonneville Steakhouse, which is the steakhouse that President Nelson was the state president of. He was actually the state president of that it was the Bonneville Steak. And we had a reception there. And it was kind of a funny thing in those days when you got married. It was kind of a thing that your friends would try to steal a bride, so you couldn't be with her that night. And so I wasn't going to have that. And my sister's father-in-law was a policeman, and so he said, well, I'll make sure that they don't steal her. So he got some handcuffs. After the reception was over, we were ready to leave, and we were handcuffed so that we could stay together. Brother-in-law said, well, listen, I'll hide the car. So he took the car and hid it in his folks' place. I don't even know where it was. So I thought, well, boy, we're going to avoid all the cans and all the chasing and all that stuff. And so after the wedding, we were handcuffed. We went out and got in the car. They drove us to where our car was hid in a garage. So we got away with it. And as soon as we opened the garage door, it was all painted, and the inside was all full of packing, popcorn or something, all the seats, and they had they had tied cans up underneath, so I couldn't untie them from the bumper. So that when we drove out the garage, I heard the clanking noise of the cans, and I would have had to stop and crawl into the car. So we just went that way. And after the wedding, we went to the hotel. We loved every minute of it. We finally were able to now to play house together and be husband and wife. We were both very happy. I was, and I'm sure she was. Were you, Mom?
Yes.
She was. And we had our first apartment. It was an upstairs, one-bedroom apartment that you had to come up, and it had a bedroom, a small kitchen, small living room, and a bathroom. That was it. We lived there for that last year that we were in at the U. And then, or no, that was the start of that. And then my mom and dad had built an apartment downstairs of our home that my brother and his wife lived in, and she lived there while he went to Korea in the Korean War. So we had an apartment down in our basement. So we went from that apartment to the apartment in our basement, and we stayed there until we went to, when we graduated in '59, and we went off to dental school. The first year we lived, when I was a senior at the U, finishing up, and I was in the middle of applying for dental school. I hadn't been accepted yet. By the way, when I did get accepted to two of them, to Northwestern University in Chicago and University of Washington. Of course, so I had a choice, and I wanted to be out in the West Coast. I didn't want to go back to the Midwest, so we chose to go to the University of Washington University. So we were thrilled about that. The dental school that I went to, everything was what you can do with your hands. In fact, let me just show you. This is the kind of dentistry I was taught to do. Can you see that? Gold was the ultimate thing that you could put in the mouth because it would last and it didn't get tarnished and so forth. So we were taught how to make all these gold crowns. There's a tooth missing. So how do we do that? Well, today they'd probably drill a hole in the bone and put an implant in. I never learned how to do implants. It was all doing gold, and that gold had to be made in the lab. So if here's the situation. Here's a molar back here and a missing tooth. Now how are we going to fix that? Well, we fix it with a bridge like this, like that. So it shows gold, but the gold will last forever. But you had to prepare the tooth ahead of time, take an impression, and then go in the mouth and prepare the teeth like this. And then the final product was cemented into place. So in the time, a lot of patients that I did bridges like this in their mouth and so forth. Anyway, what I'm saying, this required a lot of dexterity. And when you were accepted into dental school, particularly to the University of Washington, you had to show them that you could do that. And if you didn't show that in the first quarter, you were asked to leave.
But also, Dad had to learn to carve from a block of
yeah, when we took the
what was it, chalk or what was it?
No, when we took the entrance exam for dental school.
Yeah, but even in school.
I'm going to tell you. You had to take a test, and they give you a square block of plaster in a square, and they say, now make that into a ball during the test. In other words, you had to carve it with yourself and go from a square to a ball and hand that in, and that would tell what you could do here, and or they'd tell you to make take a piece of chalk and make carvings in it like this, because that's the kind of thing we did. We didn't have bonding. You couldn't bond things, so you had to make it mechanically held in with cement, and so that's the kind of dentistry I did. And
what I was going to say is that you had to learn to carve. They'd say carve a 12.
I just told her
A 12 or something.
No.
I know, but in class you had to carve every single tooth.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, we
You
had,
had to learn
we had to know the anatomy.
the anatomy of
In other
every
words,
tooth.
the instructor would come in and say, all right, with a piece of paper to draw, I want you to draw me a picture of a first right molar. Had to be right, not left, but right. And so you had to know what a right tooth was, the difference between a right molar and a left molar. And you had to know that every tooth in the mouth. And we carved every single tooth in the mouth, put it all together. So it required a lot of working. And that isn't the case today. Isn't the case today. And I'm not saying that today it's all strictly, see, gold, the only problem with gold is it shows. See, that was the, but that's what we had. So that's where I excelled and did well. When you take a state board exam, you have to go in and have a patient, a live patient, and the instructors will come up and say, I want you to take that tooth there and prepare it for a crown, or put a 3-surface silver fillings in that tooth. You had to show them that you could do it on the spot. And if you couldn't do it, you'd fail the exam.
Tell him where you took this exam here.
But there was no dental school. See, a lot of places you can go into, there's dental schools you can go and do that. No dental schools here. So we had to go down to the state prison, down the point of the mountain.
And work on a prisoner.
And work on a prisoner. And we had an army chair that they used in the field for the patient. There was no suction, no little spittoon thing they could spit. They had a coffee can in their hand. And then there was no high-speed drills. It was drills with the belts like that. So we'd take all that in there, and then the instructor would go, let's have you do a full crown on this, or let's have you do a 3-surface filling on this, and so forth. Of course, you used local anesthetic, but there was no spittoon, and there wasn't a saliva ejector, and so you used a rubber dam. That's how we did all of our dentistry, on rubber dams up there. But anyway, we would get the prisoner, and they were really excellent patients because they were pretty tough eggs, most of them. But we were in a cell. There was guards outside, and we went in the cell with them, got all of our stuff hooked up, and started working. And then when you'd get the tooth prepared to where you thought it was right, you'd call the instructor over, and he'd look at it and he said, "Yeah, that looks good. Okay. All right, now go ahead and put the filling in." It was the silver filling at that time. So that's how we did our
state board.
And then also there was a lot of gold fillings that were done, but there was a gold filling on the side of the tooth that you could do. It was very difficult to do, because you had to put these braces in there. You had to separate the tooth out a little bit, and then you take a little hammer and hammer the gold in place and finish it off. It's called a gold foil. University of Washington was noted for gold foils. And they were hard to do, extremely hard. In fact, a lot of guys could never do it, period. And so you did a gold foil, and then of course we were there all day. And then that was the clinical part. Then we had to go up to the University of Utah and set up a full set of dentures, upper and lower, in a model, and wax, put them in place, finish off the gum work and everything within about an hour and a half. So that was our boards.
You had to carve the tooth out of wax.
And there were some people, yeah, you had to carve. Well, with dentures you have teeth that you put them in wax.
Yes, I mean.
But anyway, so everything depended on what you could do with your hands. That's the bottom line. And if you were kind of all thumbs and not very good, you didn't make it through dental school. The dental school I went to. In fact, there were, the first class, there were 4 that didn't pass, and they left the program because they couldn't do this kind of stuff, or they couldn't do foils and so forth. So anyway, but when we came out of school...
Can I just tell them one thing? We're living in student housing, and Grandpa is probably about his 2nd quarter or something, and he comes home and he's got to learn how to take impressions.
Oh.
So he says, "Jude, come in."
Have you ever had impressions taken? You know that tray with all that mushy stuff? Well, I practiced on her at home. And mixed it up, and put her head back and put the thing up, and she was going like, I said, it's okay, just breathe through your nose.
It felt like it was going down my throat.
And
She
after
said, no, you're just fine.
and after I took it out, there was this big long piece that hung
My
down.
tonsils.
Anyway, we had to practice. You had to do all that kind of stuff. Everything
is a true story.
did was observed by an instructor, and you got to. If you didn't do it, you did it over.
But he did have an impression of my tonsil, didn't you?
Just about.
Another thing that was fun with dental school, though, is that he had some really great guys in his class. And one was Tom Smart, and being the Smart and the Soderberg that you went alphabetically.
Yeah, my partner
tall
next to
was
me
he,
in the
honey?
lab
6 feet,
was
6'3".
played basketball for the University of Washington. He was 6'10",
Oh, yeah.
and a great big guy, but the nicest, neatest guy. And he sat right next to me in our class. And he wasn't really handy here, but he developed it over the 4 years. And during an exam, when we were doing a carving test, they'd pass out a little block of teeth, and there'd be a space machine, and they'd say, all right, now you carve a tooth to fit in that space with wax. You have an hour to do it. You start with a little piece of wax like this, you had to soften it and put it in there, and then draw, and then you had to know whether it was right or left, or if it was upper or lower. And if you put it lower in the upper and did it wrong, then you lost it.
But tell me about the Smart.
The Smart, he gets so upset, so tight, and so nervous that right in the middle of an exam, his back started. He got up from his chair. We were in little stools, and he laid down in the aisle right behind our seats and laid on the floor for about 20 minutes so he could stretch out. He was so nervous. Another time we were in the clinic. He was right next to me there.
This is so funny.
And you were working in a chair. We didn't have these lounge chairs. They were just more like a barber chair kind of. And you put the patient in there and you put a bib around him with a chain. Well, and then you'd work on him and you'd have him lean forward and spit into the thing. Well, he was working next to me, and it was an exam. And he was working, and he said, all right, spit. And the patient couldn't pull her head forward because the chain went around behind the headrest.
Went around the chair, he locked her. He was so nervous.
Oh, yeah. After I was out of the Army, I came home and decided we found a place, equipment. I bought all my equipment and had special equipment made up for me. And we started our practice on 33rd South, a little tiny office. I didn't have an assistant right off the bat by myself, and I did all my own lab work in the lab. I had a lab, and those gold fillings have to be cast in gold. Molten. You make a wax thing, and then you put that wax in and then you burn out the wax. Then you've got and then you have to put the gold in there, and you have this machine that you put the flame in there, melt the gold. Then you let the thing, and it spins, and it sucks all the gold into the mold. And then you take the mold off, and then you take the gold, smooth it down, polish it, make it like that. I did all that myself when I first started, because I knew how to do that. We did that in dental school.
Can I just say that when you started out, you didn't buy a practice. There wasn't one for sale.
No.
And you just simply put the shingle out and said, I'm open for business, and that's how it started.
Send notes to your friends and so forth.
And that, but
In other words, they said,
kind of a
if
slow
you're going to start
start.
a new tie, it's going to take you a long time to get started. And it did. It took a long time, because it was all word of mouth. And we were told in dental school, you do never advertise. Our guys were such purists. And there were some advertising dentists in Seattle, even had some neon signs on. They said, don't ever do that. It's not against the law, but it's not kosher. It's not the right thing to do. So you just get your practice build up from patient to patient to patient, and that takes a long time. And when you don't have anything to start with, you're already starting from zero. In fact, this is going to blow your mind. My tuition for my dental school, this was in 1959, was about what was it?
It was $2,000 your sophomore year, your second year,
Nice.
to start up and get the tools.
That's what it cost.
It was $2,000.
and then you pay.
But then you have your
You had to pay every quarter.
yeah, you have to pay your quarter stuff, but
And,
just buy, in addition to everything else, you had to buy.
And in fact, when I was through with my my dental school, my folks helped us a little bit. I spent a total of $12,000 for 4 years. And now what are the tuitions are some of these? $80,000 tuition for dental school. So anyway, I started working on rats, and then I'd have to take out their salivary glands and put them in liquid nitrogen, and then we would take them back when it'll thaw them and run them through machines and measure levels of different kinds of things. Too complicated just, but that's basic research, and I could see right off the bat this is going to be what I want to do. So after about 2 years at that, I went to the dean, who was the dean of the pharmacy school. I said, and then I started developing an allergy to the rats I was working with. Now these are not rats you catch in the wild. These are laboratory rats. They're all white, and they're bred to do experiments on. So they're kind of docile. They're not mean, although occasionally they might bite you. But anyway, and so we'd have to do because it's the same kind of a system that humans are. It's a mammal, and so we use rats. We don't use human beings as guinea pigs. See? Okay. Anyway, I got to a point where I was starting to get a lot of allergies, and I went to, and I could tell right off the bat that I wasn't going to be a basic researcher. I had to deal with people, patients, things like that, and that wasn't going to happen. So anyway, I went to him and said, I said, I think I'm going to have to leave because I'm having trouble making a living and so forth.
With allergies too.
Huh?
And your allergies.
And these allergies. He says, well, now wait a minute, we can still do, why don't we just make it at a master's degree instead of a PhD? So we decided then that I would finish out another year and get a master's degree in pharmacology, which is the study of drugs, how they work on the body. And so we used to have to do experiments on rats. We would, in other words, if you wanted to see how a drug acts when you put it in the mouth, we'd take the rat, we'd put a big tube down their throat, put the drug in that, holding the rat while it's still alive, and then measure what happens. So you use rats as guinea pigs, and as you go further, they use apes, they use chimpanzees. So I never got to that point, but rats are a very common laboratory animal that they work on, and that's when I started. And I could see right off the bat that I was going to be. So anyway, I said, Reward, I've got to finish it. So anyway, I added another year and finished that out.
And got his master's.
Got his master's in pharmacology.
The 3 boys, he took turns. He had to go up there and do every 5 hours.
I had to try it, see what happened with a certain drug, and then take a sample of the salivary glands every 3 hours to see what the levels were in the salivary glands. And to do that, you have to kill the rat, dissect out the glands, and put it on ice, and so you can go back and re-examine it.
But don't tell the worst part. But anyway, the boys did want to go up with him. They each took turns, and you took him up with them, and it was.
We take the rat. We had this big tube.
Don't tell him the rest of it.
Well, and you had to put the rat to sleep. You can't work on it while it's awake, and so we put it in this chloroform, and then put them asleep. Then you'd have to, and while they were still awake, you'd open them up, go in the mouth, and dissect out.
I don't want to hear any more about that.
Dissect out the glands, and then we would destroy the rat afterwards.
Okay, and that's the end of the story. But he did get his master's degree from the University of Utah.
And,
School of
okay,
Pharmacology.
so when I decided to terminate, by that time Reed had established a major school in Weber, and he decided, well, why don't you come up and see if they'll accept you up here as a teacher.
Oh, but let me tell you too, with him, everything else that was going on in his life, he had to go up there like every 3 to 5 hours.
Well, that was just for one setting. That was all the time.
Well, there was a period though, and that was hard. He had to go through the night. You'd have to go through the night, to keep that. And that's when you a lot of times took the boys. But anyway, it wasn't easy. So.
But anyway, finally after I got my master's, I applied for a professorship at Weber, and they accepted me, and I started as an assistant professor on a 3/4 time contract. That means I worked all fall, winter, and spring, but I didn't have to work in the summers. And so I had to practice dentistry part-time during the day and go up to Weber part-time. So my average day when I first started at Weber was I'd go up to Weber on Monday morning, teach a couple of classes, come back Monday afternoon and practice dentistry. Tuesday was the same thing. Yeah, Tuesday was the same thing, in the morning and afternoon. And Wednesday I was up there all day. And Thursday I was in my office in the morning. And Friday I was up there. So I was 2 full days at Weber and 2 half days at Weber. The rest of the time I was in the office. So I was doing both of those, coming and going. So my typical day, I'd get up there and go to Weber and teach a couple of classes, come back, see 3 or 4 patients in the afternoon, do the same thing on Tuesday. And then Wednesday I was up at Weber all day. And Thursday I would go into the office sometimes on Thursday mornings, but I was supposed to be up there at Weber, but I was only up there occasionally. And then Saturday I was in my office. So I really worked 6 days a week, part-time here and there. So we did that for a lot of years, and
But a lot of times, then you were made director, or what was it?
no, not yet.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I was now an assistant professor at Weber, and it was a 9-month contract, 3/4 time. So I had to make sure I got those hours in there, so forth. And when you go into academia, when you become a professor, there's a thing called tenure. Have you ever heard of that word? Well, tenure means that after 7 years they evaluate you, and if they like you, they'll give you tenure. In other words, you can't be fired. Well, I went for tenure, but I was only 3/4 time, so I was never able to get tenure. But they kept me on, and even after I was up there 30 years, they just kept me on because I was doing a good job and I had good student evaluations and things like that. But I never did have tenure. And finally, they made me an associate professor, which is the next level, and the ultimate is the full professor. Well, I couldn't be a full professor because I wasn't full-time. So with 3/4, so anyway, got that. So, and another thing that was good about Weber, we supplemented our income, and we had a benefit package up there. All of our health insurance was up there, and our retirement was up there. In other words, they would take money out and put in your retirement, and they would give you full health care for the whole family. So, and to do that in dental practice, we wouldn't have been able to do that because I didn't have that many patients, you know.
But you weren't working full-time.
Yeah. So anyway, I did that for 30 years, and I probably have told you this before, but during those, you're always, at the end of a class, you always have student evaluations that the students fill out. And that's based on how well those are you, based on how much a raise you get each year. So I had a salary at Weber with full benefits, full health care, and retirement. So when I retired in
It was
2005, I had a big wad of money in there that Weber had paid for. It was a big, and if I had tried to do that myself, I would have never had that money. So anyway, I had that plus full medical care, which got me through all the illnesses I had. So, and then one of the faculty in respiratory therapy her name was Georgine Bills. She was a respiratory therapist. She came to me and said, "We need a book in respiratory therapy on pharmacology for respiratory therapy. So why don't you and I do a book together, particularly for respiratory therapists?" So she and I worked again, and we wrote a book about this thick. In fact, I can't even find it now.
Oh, I've got it.
So I did the respiratory. I did the pharmacology part of it. In other words, the drugs that she used in treating the lungs and so forth. And then she did the actual clinical part. So we did a book. We did 2 editions of that. So that brought a little extra money in too. But another.
That was a lot of work.
A lot of work.
That was a lot
and
of work.
I couldn't type.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to type, but I had a full-time secretary. So I would write out my notes like this, and then she'd type it up and give me a rough draft. And then we had to put that into the publisher and have it proofread, and took a lot of time, a lot of effort. but we finally published 2 editions of that, respiratory therapy for pharmacology for respiratory therapists.
Okay, this is a little bit of my story. I was born in Salt Lake, August 11th, 1938, on a hot summer day. And I was the youngest of 6 siblings. My mom and dad were Laura and Lowell Castleton. Mother's name was Laura Reinders Castleton, and dad's was Wallace Lowell Castleton. My oldest brother was Dick, and then came Marge, and then Dave and Graham, and then Joyce, and then me. And we were, there's 5 of the kids are all just a year and a half apart. Joyce and I are 6 years apart. Dad traveled the southern Utah route and sold all they call dry goods, anywhere from blankets to sheets to anything that you would need, kitchen towels, anything. And so when he was gone a lot, he decided to buy a house down in Richfield because it was a little bit more centrally located, and Mother and I think a couple of the kids were born there. Mother had the kids down there, and I wasn't part of that era, but they were there, and then it was easier for Dad to get home and spend a little bit of time with the family. And then in May of 1932, Grandpa Wallace Claudius Castleton, his dad, my father's father, passed away in May of 1932. Joyce was born in September of 32. And so the 2 of us never did meet Great-Grandpa Castleton. He was tall, very handsome, very nice looking, and just always heard such great things about him. And the love of his life was, his wife was Alice Bittner Castleton, who was my dad's mom. And so Alice Bittner Castleton, her father was Brenneman Bar Bittner, and then Preston Hinckley's mother was Ada Bittner Hinckley. And so grandmother was number 5 in her side with Sarah August, or with Marjorie Martina, and Ada Hinckley was on the other side with Brenneman Bar as her father, but with her mother of Sarah Augusthorpe. So my grandmother was number 5, and Ada was number 5 in her family, so they were half sisters. And so then Grandpa, my dad, Wallace Lowell Castleton, and Preston Hinckley, Dad and Uncle, and Preston Hinckley were first cousins, but through same grandfathers, same fathers, but different grandmothers. Okay, so when my grandpa died, Dad, the home became a little bit big. His family, his brothers and sisters. Dad was the oldest. Dad's had a brother. There was Dad, and then Uncle Ken, Uncle Paul, and Aunt Virginia and Aunt Helen. Virginia Briner, Helen Richards, and then Ken and Paul and Dad. So then it was a big home for grandmother Alice Bittner to have by herself. So Dad bought the home from her and was able to help her get into a home that was just around the corner on L Street. We were at 73 L Street, and that was the home that my dad and all his siblings grew up in. So it was just a family home with lots of memories and that for all of them. So it worked out great to have Dad get that home. So he bought that from grandmother. Then she was just around the corner, and so she was real close by, and Dad just took such good care of her and looked after her all her life. So I was the first one that was born on the L Street home then, because the others had been in Richfield, I think. I had really good friends there. Carol Lipson was one of my best friends, and she lived up on 3rd Avenue and K Street, so it was about 2 or 3 blocks before that I had to walk to go up there. She was a wonderful friend. And every year for Halloween, Carol was a hobo. Every single year. There was never a year, and I was a witch. And that's the only costume I ever remember having for Halloween is that, and she just, grabbed some stuff, and she was a hobo. And we'd go around. Back in those days, we had a man down on 1st Avenue that was alone, and anybody that would come, he'd give him either a penny or a nickel, one year he'd have pennies, and next year he'd give you a nickel instead of candy. That's what he had on hand, and it was kind of fun getting even a small amount like that. Longfellow School is where we had to learn a lot of poems, the Longfellow poems from William Wordsworth Longfellow. So anyway, and then also my family, genealogy and looking back, had with Byron Whitney, and some of them there was a chain of loving poems, but my love came from that, and I had, when I was in about the 3rd or 4th grade, I had to memorize my grandpa's walking stick. That was one of the poem that I had chosen to memorize. And the teacher thought I had done such a good job, she had me go to all the other 3rd or 4th graders, whatever they were, and recite that in each of the classes, and I thought that was really something. So in our family home on L Street, it was just, that home was so loved by everybody, and every single Sunday we had one of Dad's siblings would come down, and it was just the main center part of the family, and there was just always somebody coming down. My mother had always made 2 cakes. She made a white buttermilk cake with some white frosting and sometimes with coconut, and then she'd make another one with just chocolate. Now Mom only had one oven, and she always made pies or cake or something that we'd have on Sunday dinners. And so everybody would come, and of course Mom always had, a little something for them. But in this house, not only was my dad and all his siblings that they lived, but Mom and Dad and all our siblings. So Dick was the oldest. He was married to Aunt Jean. Then there was Marge, and she was married to Uncle Maury. And then there was Dave, and he was married to Aunt Maureen. And then they had 8 children. Then later on, they got divorced, and Uncle Dave married Debbie and had Sarah and Shelley and Sarah. And then Grant came along, and Grant and Ann, and they had 4 boys. Dick had 7 children. Marge had 6. Dave had the 8. Grant had the 4 boys. And then there was Joyce, and she had 5 kids. And Kathy had leukemia, and she passed away just about a week before she turned 19. She and Brent were exactly the same age. And the day Brent got his mission call is the day that she died, up at Primary Hospital. And then there was me, and we had I married, of course, Grandpa. And then we had our 5 children. Now, while the boys were on their missions, we were still in this house. Dick, Dave, and Grant all worked up at the cemetery, which started at 4th Avenue and went clear up to about 11th Avenue. And they would go up and they would do lawns, and they had to do them with there wasn't electric mowers. They did them all with the hand mowers. And then they'd have to move the hoses and water by hand. And they did that every summer, and it was hard. But they earned such, I wish I could remember how much they earned a day or a week or something, but anyway, they used to walk up there, and the boys did that. And the boys were on their missions. It was up to us 3 girls to mow the lawn and keep that up. We didn't have a huge front yard. We did have a pretty good sized rectangular backyard with clotheslines on it, and in the summer it was fun because we would put blankets over the clotheslines, and then we'd put a blanket on the bottom, and then we'd sit out there and play Monopoly or games in the summer. And in the backyard we had a beautiful dark cherry Bing cherry tree that you'd pick, and everybody just loved the cherries, except it went so high that the birds got a lot of those at the top, and we'd have to get a ladder to do it. So anyway, then at the very end of the driveway was the garage, and then there was just a little swing set, and then there was just kind of a wall, and it went to over that was just some vacant place there. And then on the one side from the swing set and that was a family called Monk, Jeannie Monk, and she was older than I was. And on Sundays, if Dad was at home and he wasn't traveling, he would always come home, even though he traveled all week, he'd come home and we'd take a Sunday ride somewhere. We'd go somewhere in the car and be together. But, so this Sunday afternoon, for some reason, I don't know, Jeannie had invited me over to her house, which would be just around the corner from us, but our backyard's backed up. And I was in there with her, and I can't remember if her parents were home or if she was alone. I don't remember exactly. And she locked me in. She wasn't going to let me get out. And I was scared to death. I mean, I'm the biggest scaredy cat in the world. And I told her, I said, listen, I've got to go because they're going to be going for a ride, you know, and stuff. And why I was there, I'll never know. And it took a long time. And finally, I think I just was able to sneak away from her or do something. And I did unlock the door and I ran home. And that, so I never did like her again. Also there, just up the half a street on 2nd Avenue, on the corner was a huge, huge tree. And then just dirt. There wasn't even any grass. And I was such a tomboy and loved to climb up the tree. And then they had just some little thing, a knot, like a big knot at the end of the rope. And you'd sit on that knot and swing down from the tree and go through all the dirt. So can you imagine what I looked like when I'd go home? The tub was just black. And Mom would make me get in and take a bath. And see, we only had one bathroom, so if somebody needed to go to the bathroom and you're in there trying to get this out, and then you have to scrub your tub out with all that dirt and stuff. Another thing we did when we were there is we played Run Sheepy Run, where you'd hide and kick the can, and but Run Sheepy Run, you could hide even within a block away from our house, and then then you'd have to see who could get home, and if you got caught, then you were the next one to be it. And one fun thing I remember was, I don't know how old I was here either, but 8 or 9, 10, somewhere around there. There was a phone call, and Joyce answered it, and it was the KSL station. And they had called and asked for Dave, and she says, well, he's not here right now. So Joyce ran all the way to the elementary school. And Dave was there playing baseball or something there. And she told him that they wanted him. They hung on the phone. And Dave ran all the way home, and they asked him if he would come and be the Little Prince on KSL in the radio show. And he did. He did do that. But here, they're waiting on the line. Joyce doesn't tell him she's got to go 3 blocks to go to the school, 3 blocks back. Dave had a wonderful singing voice. There was a lot of music in our family. Always had a record going, and a Victrola, and with Marge playing her piano, and Joyce played a little bit. And by the time it came to me, Mother was just like, I just can't stand to hear you practice anymore, and I just kind of gave up on it. Marge was so good, we'd rather just hear her play. So I'm sorry now I didn't stick with it, but back then it didn't seem important to me. So Marge dated quite a little bit, but we didn't have hair blowers and stuff back then. This is way back then. This is in the 40s. So Marge would wash her hair, and you'd put it up in pin curls. We'd just do that and then put these 2 pin curls to help hold your hair to get it curly and that. And so she'd sit on the steps that were going upstairs with our little Electrolux, this little gray vacuum thing where the air would come out, and she'd sit there and blow her hair dry. Can you imagine all the lint and all the stuff that came out? That's how she would get her hair dry before she'd go on a date or be going somewhere. And I just remember her sitting on those stairs. Joyce always had to wash the kitchen floor. I don't know why, but she always did. Marge never did. Marge was always busy going somewhere and doing something. I always had to vacuum and do the piano keys and dust. When Dad would come home, so Saturday night when he was going to be coming home, Joyce had to clean the kitchen floor, and she always did such a good job. Then we'd put newspaper out all over the floor. And so that when we heard Dad drive in, then we'd pick all the newspaper up, and the floor would be clean. So that if you came in from outside, you wouldn't leave any footprints and have it all clean. My mother always had a nice meal for Dad when he would get home Saturday nights. And because everybody else was gone, I was usually there doing something. Dad would come in. I just remember this so vividly. He would come in, and he would be sitting at the table, and Mother would be fixing and getting his plate ready and everything. And I sat on his knee, his knee, and he had his arm around me. and he would be eating with his right hand, but he had his arm around me, and he and Mom would be talking, and Mom would fill him in, how the week had gone and stuff like that. But I'd sit there every time with his arm around me. Just loved it. That was just real special for me. Another special time with Dad was when he loved home teaching, and when he was going to go home teaching, his partner couldn't go, and he was going to a couple of widow ladies. So he said to me, "Judy, do you want to go with me?" This is also the times I think I must be around 8 or 9, 10, somewhere around there. And I just thought he'd asked me to go to Lagoon or something with him. I was so thrilled, and I remember him taking my hand and holding my hand all the way, and we went and visited these ladies, and I had to be real good. I had to go and just sit there quietly and be very reverent and very nice, and that or I couldn't go with him again. And I just remember that was so special to go and visit these ladies. Dad loved to go and just check on people, make sure everybody was okay. Was very compassionate and that, but just to go with him alone, have him hold my hand, you would have just thought we were going somewhere special. That was real fun for me. When Dick and Jean got married, and I don't know why, they got married in March, so this was in summer. We all went on their honeymoon together. And we went to San Francisco. And here we are all piled in this dumb little car. And it's so far to go, and you couldn't drive very fast in those days. But anyway, for some reason, so we had a car. I guess Dick and Jean had a car, and then we were all piled in this other one. And Uncle Grant was always, they called him skinny because he was tall and slender and that. And he was always goofing off. He was just always the kid that was the last one we could find to get, to bring with us or whatever. So we stop at this lookout place, and Grant's just over to the side, and he jumps off, but what we didn't know is that there was just a little landing there, so you couldn't see him. And he's jumped off, and he's just standing there. Well, he could have fallen clear off the mountain or hill or wherever we were. And finally, he comes crawling up and that. But we went to San Francisco. I don't know why. It's the only vacation I remember ever having, practically. And we went down Lombard Street in San Francisco, and that's that real windy street. And I remember we were so scared, and I was so scared, and that I had to get out of the car and walk down the thing with Mother, because she was scared too. The others stayed in the car while you drove down this street. And then the hills were very hilly, and we'd all get out of the car then. And Dad would drive the car down to the bottom of the hill, and then we'd come and jump back in the car and go, because we were scared. It would, go clear through the intersection. We'd all be killed. Anyway, there were just we had a lot of fun as a family. We played games, played lots of games, and had fun. When I was growing up there. Also, when we lived on L Street and I was young, we had big winters, huge amounts of snow, and I was out with Carol Ibsen. We were in our front yard, and we were lying in the snow, making angels. And that's when Carol said to me, "Do you want to know a secret?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Our mom and dads are the SANTA. I don't know if there's anybody going to be watching it." I about died. I was 10 years old, and I had never once even questioned. Back then, Santa came on the night after Thanksgiving in the parade downtown, and then we saw him at the ward party. Santa would always come to the ward Christmas party, where you get the stocking net with candy and stuff in it. I never even had a clue. I never even questioned. Just ruined my Christmas. I'll just never forget it, because I didn't have a clue. And the kids everybody kept it such a secret from me, and that, because I was the youngest, and it was fun to play along with that. Another thing we did is, and this is really a dumb thing, I probably shouldn't tell the kids what I did, but down at we were between 1st and 2nd Avenue, so down just a block and over a street was kind of an apartment house. And they had all across the garage of the apartment house was glass, and the glass was set in between steel window panes, but they were quite big, and so that you could see through it and see the cars right down in the garage. oh, what do? A bunch of us, we climb up on the snow. The snow was so high you could reach the roof of it, and we'd get up on that and then we'd slide down on the glass on that roof, and then until we jumped off into another pile of snow. Can you imagine? We could have fallen right through the thing. I can't remember. I mean, I can't remember how we lived through that, but we did. But there was so much snow, you didn't have to. We just would sit on it and we would just go lickety-split down that glass and then have fun. And then we'd wear our slippers at night after dinner. We'd go out in our slippers and slide down L Street, in our slippers. And it was really fun. Just put our snow stuff on. And then you'd really slide good. Never had any problems, never had anything happen. And that's where I met Grandpa, was when we moved up there on 9th South, when I was just turned 13. And I don't know why we had a hay rice. I don't know why we did, but we did. And everybody, I had Sid Karsh, and everybody had invited somebody, but we weren't dates or anything, but just invited different friends. And we had a great time then. And Aunt Joyce was our chaperone. And then we when we'd get through, then you'd stop and we'd have cider and donuts. And it was just a fun thing to do. But Dad remembers that's where he first saw me, and I don't remember that until it was sometime later. And I was sitting at church. We were both at the same ward, Yellcrest Ward. And I was sitting, and I must have happened to just turn, and I was looking. And I was sitting on the left side. Dad was sitting on the right side there. He was doing the sacrament, and he was looking over, and I said, "Who's that guy looking at us?" And they said, "Well, that's Bobby Soderberg." And so that's where I really first saw him, was at church. So then, while we had a wonderful group of friends, 2 and 3 years apart, we weren't all the same age, but we didn't go anywhere. I mean, our friends were our neighbors, and then kids at the ward and everything, because that's all we had. But anyway, so one time, Dad's 2 years older, but a year ahead in school, because he had to repeat the 5th grade. So anyway, I always went to Mutual so that I could see him during the week. And so word kind of got around that Bobby was going to take me, and see if I needed a ride home that night. Now, here's our ward. Here's my house, clear over here. Here's my other friends. They all went down here, and the other ones all went here. So I was the only one that went the farthest in the opposite direction. So it was kind of nice. And so anyway, we're standing, all of us, a whole bunch of girls and boys, we're standing under this arc light on the corner of the Yellcrest Ward. And here comes Dad in the car. He's just gotten his license. He's 16, see, and the other boys can't drive yet. And so Tony Anderson hops out of the car and said, "Hey, Jude, do you want to ride home?" And I said, "Well, okay, sure." So I go hop in, and back then we didn't have the divided seats, the 2 seats, it was all just one bench, front and back and everything. So I hopped in, slid over, and I expected Tony to come in and just slide down, or sit, there too. And he closes the door. So here I am, sitting right next to Dad, and I am just mortified. I couldn't even believe it. I knew Tony. I didn't even think that he wouldn't be coming with us. So I just kept inching my way all the way across till I finally made it to the door. And by then I think we were home. And he just dropped me off, and that's all there was. We didn't talk or anything. He just dropped me off. But anyway, after that, oh my gosh, I got the reputation for being this really fast little number. And Dad got ribbed about it a lot too. It was funny. But anyway, Tony and those guys are still our friends from way back then. And so it was in Yellcrest Ward really where Dad and I met. And back then, I think we mentioned earlier, you just did everybody did everything together, and everybody was friends. I don't ever remember having any real problems at all. And Friday nights was the movie night. And see, did we tell you that Grandpa ran the projection upstairs? Well, there was a place upstairs in the recreation room at the ward that had a 2-story, and it had a little room, and it had see, we didn't have much TV. I don't think there was hardly much TV, but so Friday nights, if your parents paid for a budget ticket and a little card, I was always glad because Dad always paid his budget. Then you'd bring this, then you could get into the show free on Friday night. And so there would be all sorts of different shows. Well, Dad, and I don't know if he had a friend with him or what, but anyway, he was the projectionist. And he would have to take the big, great big, what are they, 78, the big things. That's, the reels fit. The reels that I've got now that I keep my pumpkin cookies in, that's what the things would fit in, that's how big they were. And then he'd have to switch it over, without stopping the whole machine, switch it over to the next one to play the second reel of film. I don't know if you understand that. Anyway, and so because he was there then on Friday night, so I always went there so that I could see him. But didn't do anything because he was up doing that, and then I kind of left with my friends or something, I don't remember. But there was that, all the Saturdays were dances and Sundays were the fireside. We all just ran in that same little mode. Dances, Dad and I went together, or would meet. We'd all meet at the dances and dance with everybody. But then when he started playing the drums, I would just go and sit. And so we didn't dance much. So I really am not a good dancer with him, and he's got a different, the real fun rhythm, but I could never dance the way because he never did the same things twice and stuff. But I would go and sit and watch him. But at first there for a while we would go to the Saturday night dances and dance together. Or, if we went to a party or something. Also, when I was back in grade school and on L Street, we had TV just as we were about moving up to Ninth South. Just before I was 13, I think the little TVs were coming out. So the only time you really knew you saw a movie was when you went downtown, and we'd take the bus down. And usually it was Saturday morning. And then you could go and you could put your ticket in a box with your name on it or something, and every Saturday they'd draw a name out and you could win a bike. So everybody went, and then you're always hoping that you'd be the winner of the bike. And then that's when all the news would come on of what had happened during the week or month. Was on that's where you really saw what was going on in the world was on the news. And then they'd have cartoons or little movies and stuff that we'd go to, and they were like 14 cents to go to the movie. Ice cream cones back then when we were in elementary, and it was 7 cents for a single cone and 14 cents for a double. And we used to go down to Far's Ice Cream was on South Temple, and so it wasn't too far from us, and we would walk down there. And my favorite was chocolate chip, and then it was one that was called South Sea Sherbet, and it was kind of like just a real light, very kind of like just a pink sherbety type thing, very mild, and I just loved to get South Sea Sherbet and then my chocolate chip. I've always loved that. Let me just tell you one thing that was kind of fun when I was growing up. Upstairs, off of the main bedroom, it had a huge closet, and off the closet was the attic, and the attic reminded me like the girls in the Little Women, where they would go up there and they'd have all these cases and clothes and all this stuff, and costumes and dress-ups and everything, and we would play for hours up in this closet and attic area where they kept things, and that was more fun. We used to do that a lot. It was on L Street that Carol Lipson and I started that thing where we have ice cubes with Jell-O at night when we'd have a get together or have a sleepover or something. That's what we would do. I still love that. I could take an ice cube right now and dip it in Jell-O and love it. During the war, so this was in the 40s. I'm not very old, but you couldn't get butter. You couldn't get so many things, and so Mother would have, everybody would have. It was like a little bowl, and it was just like white lard. It just looked like Crisco or something. And there was a little pill that was about the size of a dime that was yellow, and we'd put that in the in the bowl with the Crisco or whatever it was like. And then you'd stir it and stir it and stir it until it all became yellow, and that was our butter. My mom made, she was a wonderful cook, and she made bread all the time. And we'd come home from school and she'd have a hot bread coming out of the oven with butter and sugar on it. This is where my sugar sweets crept in, all of us Castletons. And then another thing that Nana made that was just fabulous was, I like the light chocolate rather than the dark, and it's just because Mother made this fudge, and then she'd roll it out. The countertop had a big slab of marble. Mom had, and she would roll this fudge. She'd put it on, and then she'd roll it so it was in a roll about this big, and then it'd set up, and then we just cut it in these little pieces. Oh, it was just to die for. It was just to die for. I don't have the recipe. I'd love to make it today. Another thing that was kind of fun, when we were living on L Street with this old home, in the kitchen, see, we didn't have a dishwasher, of course. The sink had two great big bins, I don't know, that you'd pull the door out, and the door would fit against. And then you'd open it up, and there was just this big slanting, and that's where with the metal all around it, that's where you'd keep your sugar, and the next one you'd keep your flour in it. But, and then there would be a little place that you'd maybe hang your towels or something. And Aunt Joyce used to be able, she was so tiny she could slide in there. And it was a good hiding place. She slid there, but then there were these great big bins, because Mom, baked so much, she couldn't just have a little jar of flour and stuff. And it was in these great big flours. Out on our little back porch was a little refrigerator type thing. It was an ice box. And there was a man that would come down the street every week or whatever it was, and then he'd, with those great big tongs, jaw things, he'd carry from his truck out and bring and put ice in your ice box out on the porch for you. That's how you got your ice. Also, there'd be a man that would come during the summers on his truck, and he'd have oranges or apples or fruit, and he'd come and he'd slice you a piece of orange and show you how good his oranges were and stuff. Then you'd buy them from him. A little vendor along the street, and that was fun. And they did that. When Uncle Dick got home from his mission to Holland, that's where he had met the Vanderhoofs. And the Vanderhoofs were, there was the father, the mother was Bep, B-E-P. Then they had Gerard, he was just a year older than me, I think. Then Addie, A-T-Y, and then Gerard, Addie, and Jolute. And so this was I was 9 years old, so it was 1947. Dick had gotten home from his mission. He had told my dad that, or asked him, he said he had met this Vanderhoof family. And he had even been part of the underground, trying to get away from the Nazis. Well, anyway, somehow he was able to escape, get home, get his wife and these 3 children out, and they had to go through the underground and everything. And I can't remember exactly where they were, and they contacted Dick, had contacted him, or Dick knew them before, anyway, and asked him if he knew of someone that would help him get to America. And so Dick asked Dad, he said, could they come and stay with us for a month or so, a few weeks. And Dad said, of course. Well, that's when Dad kind of had, the basement was kind of dug out, part of the basement. It was really not much, it was kind of unfinished and stuff. But anyway, Dad hurried and they kind of put a bedroom down there and a bath. And then there was this little tiny family room. And Dad had them come. And they stayed with us, and they were going to stay just a few weeks with us, and ended up staying a year. They lived with us for about a year, and I was 9 years old. And Gerard was my age, and Gerard ended up going to medical school, and he became a hand surgeon. And then he fell, as I heard the story, he fell just a few years ago on the steps of either LDS hospital or one of them, and it did something anyway, and he died. And then Addie ended up getting MS, and Addie ended up marrying, and she moved back to Ohio, or Iowa, or somewhere around in there. And so we kind of lost track of her. The mother and father stayed here. They did have one more son called Jan, named Jan, a boy. And so anyway, so this family lived with us. And being the youngest, I got probably the most benefit out of it, because Gerard and the kids, we'd all walk to school together. So I was kind of their little, what would you call them, mentor to kind of help them, you know. Anyway, we'd go back and forth to school, so that was really fun for me. They were downstairs, there were 2 beds in there. And so, and I think one of them slept on the couch. But, so at night after dinner, and Mother taught Beth how to cook potatoes. She didn't even know how to cook potatoes or boil them or anything. Mother taught her everything about American eating and stuff. And downstairs, Mother had a stove and kind of a little partial kitchen because that's where she did her canning. And then just to the side is where she did her washing and stuff. So they did have some kitchen facilities down there. They ate with us a lot, but they did have some of their own. And so at night, after we'd have dinner and everything was cleaned up, we'd take our baths or whatever and get in our pajamas. And I would go downstairs and I'd sit on their bed. And this is when they would teach me to count in Dutch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still remembered that. And I would teach them English and help them learn English. They didn't know any English. And so I'd help them with their little assignments from school on how to learn English. But Gerard ended up being in my grade because coming from there, even though I think he was a year older, he needed to come back a year and catch up in his ways. He was a very nice looking kid. Anyway, so for me, for that 1 year, it was really a fun experience to have them live with us at our house there. And the others kind of missed out on that. Christmas, when we were living on L Street, was a fun time too. And I don't remember getting, I remember getting crayons and coloring book and things like that. But the one Christmas, I got a doll buggy. And I had thought it was a new doll, but it was my old doll, and Nana had made new pajamas and a new dress for it. And I was so thrilled with that buggy, you just would have thought I'd won the lottery. And so that morning, after, you know, I called Carol and we got together, and it was so much snow outside. I walked all the way up to her house with pushing this little doll and doll buggy up there to show her. And she had a little doll buggy, I think. Either she had gotten one or she had just had one anyway. And so here we were with our little doll buggies and our little dolls, and it was just the funnest. I could hardly wait to show that. But Christmas mornings we'd line up and we'd go from oldest to youngest. So I was on the bottom, lowest step, and Dick was on the top step. And we'd come and Dad would say, "Oh my gosh, it looks like Santa's come." And he'd have the Christmas lights on, and he'd have the music playing on our old little Victrola and stuff, and have a nice fire. They always had a nice fire going in the fireplace. And it was just fun. It was just, and I remember lying there at night. Our homes were so close together, and we were so close to the Booth home to the north of us, that I would lie there at night on Christmas Eve and think, I wonder, are the reindeer going to stop on our house first and then go to Booth's, or go to Booth's and ours? And I'd wait there listening to see which one they were going to hit first. I fell asleep before I ever found out. Our Christmas trees were real, and that was always fun to go and pick out a Christmas tree, and they smelled so fragrant and nice. And then, but back then, we always decorated with some cranberries and with popcorn and stuff. And we had some, the ball glass ornaments and stuff. But they were cardboard, and then half of it you would put on, they were icicles. I don't know if you've seen them. And they were those little tiny narrow strips like a piece of spaghetti almost, but they were flat. Anyway, and we would put one on each, we would put every one, you wouldn't just throw them on, you'd put one carefully on every single strand of the tree until the tree was just full of these icicles. That was the decorations and that. So after, we would take them off very carefully. And before we put them on the next year, you'd put a hanky over it and you'd iron them. Put them out so they'd iron out flat. But I remember spending hours putting these icicles on the tree and stuff. With the popcorn was fun. Nana loved popcorn. That's where Uncle Grant's just the popcorn holic. And she used to pop it in a little popper over the fireplace. That's how we did it. And she loved it, and so she'd always make the popcorn and stuff. Another thing I loved about our home there, because see, everybody was home then, or most of them, and Dad and Mother loved homemade ice cream. And down the basement of our house on L Street, when Dad was there, Mother didn't do it. Dad always made the homemade ice cream, and I was the one that got to sit there and help him make it and help him. And then as soon as it was done, you got to pull the plug and turn it off just immediately, or it burns out the motor. And then he'd always take the lid off and pull the dasher out. You've seen the dasher that has ice cream on it. And I'd have a bowl, and then we had a couple spoons with us, and Dad and I would eat it off of the dasher doing just before anybody ever even knew it was finished or had any. And Mother's dad, Grandpa Reinders, had a recipe for it was almost like kind of a light sherbet pineapple, just a real light one. I don't know how to make it. I wish I had the recipe on it. And that was always a good one. I loved strawberry. It's still my favorite. And raspberry and chocolate. I mean, you name them, but we mostly did strawberries and stuff. But that was a favorite thing that I loved, and that was doing that. And that was for my dad. And even when we were up on Nights South, and we'd all meet for the cemetery, to do the graves and stuff. You'd never buy a flower back then in those days. You just had them in your garden. You just clipped them and put them in mason jar bottles and coffee cans and whatever you had, and decorate the graves with them. But it was kind of fun. And then we'd go back to our house, our kids and everything. We'd go back. We'd make homemade ice cream. That's where I kind of got back home. I just loved. Still do. I love homemade ice cream. Nana loved flowers, and she loved. I wish I had paid more attention. She had lots of perennials that would come back year after year, and rose bushes and lilac bushes. Lilac, the purple lilac bushes, and they just smell so good. And they just come in the spring and then they're gone. And she had. Anyway, she just loved flowers. I think that's where I got my love for flowers, and that I would be with her. I don't remember always helping her, but I was there with her a lot of times when she was planting them and doing stuff. Thanksgiving was special because the day before Thanksgiving, when Mother would get the bird, they had singed all the feathers off, but then there were still the little tips of it, and we'd have to sit there and with tweezers pull out those little feather things on the turkey and that. But we'd sit there, and I don't know what we would do. We'd have music on, or we'd talk, and it just seemed that was just how it was. Something that you needed to do, and we just did it, and it made it fun. And I just remember Thanksgiving Eve. I just loved it because I just helped Mom, make the dinner and be a part of it, and then I'd leave with Dad, and we'd go, and he'd be playing a job that night. On Thanksgiving night, he'd be playing the dance job that night. So I'd go up and then come back. But I love Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving Eve. One of my jobs was, as I was growing up, I had to vacuum the basements, or the upstairs stairs, from the main floor to the upstairs. There were 18 stairs. And I thought it was so unfair because Grant only had to vacuum the basement stairs, which was only 12 stairs. And I just always thought that was so unfair. And then also, one of my jobs was to keep the piano keys clean for Marjorie, for her beautiful piano playing. And so every week I had to take a fresh, clean wash rag with just warm water and wrung out real tight and go over every key and every black note and keep those all real clean for her. And if you didn't do a good job, Mom would come and check on you and you'd have to do it over again. So you might as well learn to do it good the first time. Let me tell you the story of why I don't like cats. And I'm sorry, I really tried hard not to influence our kids, our children, not to like cats. But let me tell you my story. My best friend is Carol Lipson. She lived up on 3rd Avenue there, and just off K Street. I was up there playing with her, and she had a big, long driveway, and her sister lived at the very back in a kind of a little apartment back there. Well, anyway, they had a cat, and her sister came roaring out of the driveway to go somewhere she was driving, and she ran right over that cat. Well, it happened right in front of Carol and me, and that cat's just all splashed out all on the cement and it just made me, I just nearly died. I nearly died. It was right before our eyes. Well, there was that little incident that didn't help. Then the other one was Morris's also had a cat, and they would, to be brave, to get our bravery seal of approval, they had up at the top of their stairs, they had a little closet that wasn't very big, but it had a board so you had to step into the closet. And they had just this little board that you'd step in, but it was very small, and they had just a few coats or some things up there. And so I was taking my turn to prove how brave I was to stay in this closet alone. You had to stay in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that. Well, I was just dying, but I wanted to be part of the gang, and I wanted to do that. Well, I get in there, they close the door, then they open it and they throw their cat in at me. So that cat is just scrambling all over me. The cat's scared to death. I'm mortified. And that with this stupid cat. And it just, I just was screaming my head off. Finally, they let me out. So then another time, I'm over, and you didn't ring the doorbell. You called Barbara Jean, Patty Ann. You know, you just call their name at the door. And so I'm standing there at the door waiting for them to come and answer it. And what happens? The dog next door chases their cat, and the cat comes running on the porch where I'm standing and comes just hanging on me, just clawing me to death because he's scared of the dog. And so this cat, again, is just attacking me. Well, I was just so scared, I thought I was going to die. I mean, it was surprising, but it was just not a soft, furry, little, lovable cat. And so from then on, I just didn't have great experiences with cats and that, and I'm sorry, I love dogs, I love a few animals, but a cat, and I know sweet Sarah has got the most darling little cat with her, and she loves it, and it looks darling, it's a cute one, but I have just had those bad experiences, and I can't do it. Let me just clear a couple little things up. When we first got married, we were married in the Salt Lake Temple. Not the reception, not the Bonneville Steakhouse, that was our reception. We were married in the Salt Lake.
In the Salt Lake Temple, yeah.
Yeah. And Dad and Mother had the very best friends were Lillian and Fred Schwinneman. And he was a sealer at the temple, and that's who married us. We always called them Aunt and Uncle because we just loved them and were so much they were part of our lives. Okay, so then when Dad and I got married, I'm getting ready. Got married about 8 o'clock in the morning. That was the only time they had open. Now, Dad was taking a final the day before we got married. We took out our damages like on Wednesday. Then Dad was taking more finals all that week. We were trying to get ready, and then we got married on Friday. And so Dad came for me the next morning early, and that was so hard on everybody else. We didn't realize that Dad had children to get up and get dressed and get down to the temple. Well, anyway, so we get down there and are married, and then when Dad comes for me that morning, I had a dress that I was planning. I'm really excited, and we're getting married. Dad comes for me to get me to take me down to the temple, and so the last thing I did, so that I didn't mess my hair up or anything, is I put my dress on, and just as I my dress at the back zipped up all the way, and the zipper broke. Well, we didn't have time to fix the zipper or anything, so I had to go to Plan B and grab another dress. And that's what I wore to the temple, and that's where our pictures were in. At the temple, and that was just, we didn't come out of the temple in temple clothes, we were dressed. Anyway, so Nana, bless her heart, we came home before we were going to go and have a brunch up at Fort Douglas Country Club, because that Grandpa played golf and he was part of that club up there by the U. Nana came home, she and Dad stopped and bought a new zipper and came home and put that zipper in the dress for me. And then that's what I wore to the luncheon. And it was that little brown two-piece dress with a hat. And Grandpa had a real thin pinstriped brown and white suit. And that's pictures you've seen and stuff. And I had my little purse and my gloves. Oh, it's just a riot now. But honey, back then you did everything. It was just like it was all written out. That's what you did, and you never varied. And anyway.
Tradition.
So anyways, we get out of the temple, or we get out of the luncheon, and we're going to go and take our things to the motel so that we'll have things already down there. So we come out of the temple, and Uncle Dick has put money in everybody's meter.
Grand.
No, it was Dick, but he forgot that Dad had picked me up, and Dad, was using the family car. We didn't have a car. So we got a ticket.
A parking ticket.
A parking ticket. So we come out, we get our parking ticket. Anyway, then after the luncheon, we were going down State Street, and we didn't have any money, and we didn't do anything nice. So Dad had gotten a little motel off State Street. Honey, it was the dumpiest dump you've ever.
It really wasn't.
It really was. It was clear at the back of the thing. I was scared to death. I mean, it was awful, and I was so scared. But anyway, it didn't cost much. So we took all our things there, and on the way to the motel to drop our things off, the siren comes up, and the police comes up, and they said, "Sir, did you know how fast you're going?" And Dad said, "No." And he said, "Well, you were going 25 in a 20-mile school zone." So he writes the ticket, and he says, but officer, we just got married." And he said, "I know, and have a nice day." And that's a good excuse, Anyway, so we got 2 tickets. So we got 2 tickets that day, as we're going to the motel and drop our stuff off. Anyway, that was just a little side thing. But Nana sure did a favor for me. She was a wonderful seamstress, and anyway, then what was so funny, and I don't know why, we look back now, I don't know why, but so after we drop our stuff off, Dad takes me home, and he goes home, and we meet at the reception. Do you remember that?
Well, wasn't that what you would do?
Well, we're married, so we could have gone together.
Yeah.
So anyway, I never thought a thing about it. So anyway, I got all ready to go and meet him at the reception, and I had a terrible cold. I had stayed up late and tried to get things done, and we were just, school was just finishing, and anyway, and I get a cold terrible. So I'm at the reception. Ka-choo! Ka-choo! Boyman, only I don't have a hanky or a Kleenex or anything. Luckily, he has got a hanky in his pocket, so I borrowed that, and it's just soaking wet by the time we get through the reception. And all through, I'm just like, "Oh, thank you for coming." So I'm blowing my nose and coughing in their face. But anyway, we had a real nice reception. We really did. And back in those days, what they did that is so dumb is that the people that took care of the gifts in the room, they opened all your gifts. They opened everything up. We didn't open them up. They opened them up and put them open on a table. So then when we have to get them to take them to, Mom and Dad's home or something to leave until we get an apartment, they're all open. So you're trying to find boxes and trying to wrap stuff. That was our wedding day. But I will tell you honestly, and I have since the first day, that was the happiest day of my life. I just had waited. We had dated a long time. We waited to get married, and it worked out just great. And it really and truly, the day was just wonderful. I was happy. It was beautiful weather. I didn't care. As long as we were together, it was a wonderful day. But I'll tell you something funny then. So then the next morning we get up, and we're going to go on our honeymoon up to, now this is June 6th, we're going to go up to Jackson Hole, and then we stayed there and over at Colder Bay, and we'd only been gone a couple days. And then we had like 3 days that we could go. And I kept a little tablet of paper, and every popsicle or stick of gum we bought, I kept, because we had $100 to go on it. And I really did. I wish I had kept that now. I wrote it all down. By the time we paid for a motel and got gas, and the thing that is, there were no places open that early in the park. So you couldn't get food very easy. We never did. I don't know what we lived on.
We ate in the dining room at Canyon. I know that.
Some little, something, but we never had a
We didn't
decent.
care. We're just in love.
Yeah, we didn't even really realize it until we look back and think, we really didn't eat while we were gone, because there wasn't anything open. That was mainly, what it was. Then when we get up to Colder Bay, we get a knock on the door, and it's Dad's friend, Jack Banta, has come to see us, and he's on his way to Jackson Hole to work for the summer.
Oh, he was fishing bridge going to Yellowstone.
Yellowstone, to work for the summer or something. Anyway, but I was really sick, so that morning we get up, and besides having this terrible cold, Grandpa wakes up and his eyes are just all swollen, and he can't even hardly see at him. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's allergic to me. I really did, honest and true. I thought, oh no, he's allergic to me. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, we packed up, and we were going to head up the canyon, and Mother and Dad lived on 9th South up by parties, and she'd go. So we stopped there, and I says, Mom, what am I going to do? He's allergic to me. And she laughs and laughs, and she said, well, tell me about, well, anyway, it turns out that back then, the 1st of June, that's when the cottonwoods come out in the trees.
And it was just
And there was a little
unit in the window.
Yeah, and
Right.
that had kind of blown in, and he was really allergic to it. We didn't know that. And so she gave us like an antihistamine, and we headed up the canyon. Well, we head up Party's Canyon. And we're going up there, and Grandpa pulls over to the side and stops the car and gets out, has me lay down on the seat, and puts nose drops in my nose, because nose drops was the cure-all for everything when he was at home with his mother. You just put nose drops in. It's just like in the big factory when he'd use use Windex, and it clears everything. Well, anyway, and I remember lying there getting these nose drops. I've never had nose drops. Anyway, but it took me several days to get over that, and I really was quite miserable. So we get to the park, and it was pretty, and it was fun. I'd never been up there. Grandpa knew that was just the place to go. So we're driving along through Yellowstone or somewhere around in there, and he said, oh, Jude, let's just stop. I wonder if there's any fish in here.
It was by Old Faithful.
And so we stop, and by darn, he's got his fishing stuff in the trunk.
Just a pole.
Pole? I didn't know. And I said, well, I'll sit in the car because I felt so rotten. I had this, and he goes fishing.
Well, honey, I was gone 10 minutes.
Your 10 minutes was not shorter than my hour or whatever it was as I sat there in the car, but I felt so rotten. Anyway, he happens to have his fishing pole. So do you think that's why we've been to Yellowstone every year and we've been fishing? It started, little did I know that it started way back then. We came home in 3 days, and then we were trying to get settled in our apartment because, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe it was Monday. He had to be to work, and I had to be to work. And so we only had 3 days to be off. Dad worked, tell him where you worked though, that summer.
Well, my dad worked for Kennecott, and I worked at the mill, the refinery, and I worked on the track gang. I had to, in other words, I was really hard labor. And I was, I wasn't very big.
Okay, well, when Dad and we had dated all through high school and then college, and then, see, Dad used to go all through high school. After he got back from the parks, being there two summers, then he played the drums with Neil Waite's band. That was 13-piece or 12-piece band with trombones, trumpets, the bass, guitar, sax. Anyway, and Dad used to have to come the earliest to get all his stuff set up, and he was the last one to leave. Everybody else had just grabbed their piano music and leave. Or anyway.
Piano player had the best.
Yeah. But anyway, and so I used to sit with Dad and go with him when he played on the weekends at the jobs and that. It was fun. And Neil Wade had a girlfriend, Renee, and he ended up marrying her too. So Renee and I would sit together, usually just off to the side, and while these guys were playing the band. When he gave me my diamond, he had been doing a dance job out of the Avalon out on State Street. And so then after we would oftentimes go down, and it was like Little America is what it was like. And it was drive-up service.
The dollhouse.
The dollhouse. But instead of just getting to drive up and getting a Mighty Mo and an orange cremo, which we would get, we went inside and had dinner that night. It was late, but we got a little something to eat in there. And then we just went home because Thanksgiving was the next day and I really didn't know that. I mean, I knew we were going to be getting married, but I had no idea he had the ring. And so then we just pulled home, and Mom and Dad we just sat in the driveway by the back door and we were just talking and stuff, and then he pulled out this diamond. It was beautiful. Anyway, it was very, very pretty and just surprised me to death. So I was really excited to go in and tell Mom and Dad that we were engaged. And then it was fun because we were having dinner. Dad was coming to our house for dinner with all my family, brothers and sisters, Thanksgiving Day. And then we went over, and Grandma Soderberg was having dinner over there. So it was a fun day because we were able to tell everybody we were engaged and show them my ring. So Thanksgiving Eve has always been kind of a fun, special time for us. We had this darling little apartment. It was in a fourplex. There were two fourplexes together. We were in the upstairs, and we've been married July 6th. The 4th of July, Dad says to me that morning, "Jude, I think I'm just going to run up to the
Brighton.
Not Brighton.
Big Cottonwood. Big Cottonwood.
Anyway, and just see if there's any fish. Just do a little bit of fly fishing." So I said, "That's fine." And I was just getting showered and ready, and we're getting bathed and everything, getting ready to, whatever. And Mom and Dad always, my family, see, they all had little kids then, and they all got together, and Mom would always do a fun 4th of July breakfast, and then later in the day we'd all gather at Mom and Dad's and make homemade ice cream and have a picnic and have fun or go to the park or whatever it was. And so I remember Dad was gone, and he just did not come back. He left early, but he just stayed and stayed. It was so fun for him. And I remember sitting on the top steps of the outside of our little duplex and sitting there and just crying and think, what have I done? Why didn't I just have him take me over to Mother's and leave me there while he went fishing for the day? Because I was just sitting there home alone, didn't have anything to do. I remember sitting on that top step until you got home, and I felt so bad.
Brought fish home with me too.
Yeah, you did. But then we went over to Mom and Dad's after. But from there, we stayed in that little apartment just during the summer because in the fall, Dad got accepted to dental school. And so we moved in with Grandma and Grandpa Soderberg since they had this apartment already for Perry Jane. So we lived there with them for about 8 or 9 months, 9 months or so, till we left to go to dental school in July or August of that summer. So, but anyway, let me tell you about the first Christmas while we were down there at Grandma and Grandpa's. We'd gone and bought just a darling little tree, a fresh tree, and came home and set it up, put lights on and everything. It was just really fun. Cozy, darling little basement apartment. But the thing that I'll never forget is, so when we went to bed Christmas Eve, I can't remember if we had socks, did we?
Can't remember.
I don't remember that, but anyway, we were in bed, and then Dad says, I've got to, this was in the morning, I guess, and he said, "I got to get up and see if Santa Claus came." And I thought, what? Santa Claus won't be coming here. Anyway, and he had snuck out there, and he had bought us a little brownie camera. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got up and opened our gifts, and we had that little camera, I was just thrilled to death. I just could not believe that there was a surprise for us, because we did not have a camera. We must have borrowed somebody's camera when we went on our honeymoon, because we only have just a few little pictures, you know, of that. But anyway, that was just the best surprise. I had no idea Grandpa would even think of doing something like that. And he got up and he put the lights on, and he had the Christmas lights on and everything. He did just kind of like I was used to when I was home and little. And did your Dad do that too? Mm-hmm. Mom and Dad? And so that was just that first Christmas was really a fun Christmas. Okay, so then we left the summer of '59 after Dad had graduated from the University of Utah. Then we left, and Dad had not been up to Seattle, nor had I. And so we left in this little car pulling this little tiny U-Haul
trailer.
And that just had like our suitcases, a vacuum in it. We didn't have any furniture or anything, but just some things that we would need first off. And we got a trailer hitch and hooked that onto our car and left and drove up to Seattle. And we stayed overnight somewhere one night, and then the next night we had pulled into Seattle, but it was Saturday night and it was late, and we got a motel. And that's when one of my favorite things happened, because I was just so tired, and I didn't realize that I was pregnant with Scott. I kind of thought I was, but I was really just starting out with him, and I was kind of sick and real tired. Didn't know that came with it, but anyway. So I says, "Oh, Dad, I don't know if we want to go to church the next day." And he said, "No." Grandpa had given him, Grandpa soderberg, given him a blessing and said, "Dad, if you will stay active in the church and not put schooling before, but stay with it, the Lord will bless you all through school." Something like that, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
Something like that. It was really a sweet prayer before we left. Anyway, and so we get up there. So the next morning, we don't know where to go. So we start looking in the phone book and find this ward that's like a Seattle 3rd Ward. And we thought, well, I guess we'll just go over and see if, we called and found out what time it started and stuff. So we did go. And that morning, as we were sitting there on the bed, and I was trying to decide whether to go or not. Dad had made up his mind that we were going to go. He drew a triangle on the sheet, and he put God up here at the top, line, Bob, another line, Judy, and then the line across, the Lord, and then the 2 of us. And he said, "Okay, Judy, there's just the 3 of us now. There's both of us and the Lord. And our families are behind us. They're not with us anymore, and so there's just the 3 of us." Remember you doing that? We went over to the ward, and a couple came up to us and asked us if we were new, and we told them that we were just, had gotten in town. Dad was going to go to school here, and we were going to look for a place to live. I can't even remember their names now, can you?
Well, we had been given a name by somebody who'd been in a mission up
Well,
there.
Brent Halverson in our ward had said, but we didn't know them, and we hadn't even found them. They found out, anyway, this couple had found us, and they came over and we told them, and they said, "Well, listen, we're going to Salt Lake tomorrow for a week with our kids. Would you like to stay in our place free?" Gosh, we said, "Yes, that'd be wonderful," until we could find a place. So we stayed in their house, and they had us come over for Sunday dinner for a little picnic. And I was just so sick, I just could hardly even eat. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they left and we came back. Well, in the meantime, we found a place, but it wasn't ready for us to go in. But his father was a patriarch. So his mom and dad says, "Yes, we've got a bedroom upstairs, so you could just stay up there until you can get into this place." So that's what we did. So you'd have to go in the front door and walk all through their front room, go up the back stairs, and there was just one bedroom that was just big enough for a bed. And we had a little tiny black and white TV. And it had a bathroom, but it had a sink and toilet, but no tub. We'd have to go down there and ask them when we can use their shower or their tub. There were no showers back then. That was pretty embarrassing to have to go down and make an appointment to do that. Plus, in the fridge, there was just their fridge. They would give us a little place that wasn't any more than 12 by 12 or something. We had milk and we had a little grocery sack that in there with some cereal and some bread, I think, and that was all there was room was for a little. They didn't give us anything, and then in the fridge they just gave us this little tiny spot. I don't know how we lived. I don't know how we ate and how we lived, and the whole time we were there, they never once had us eat with them or anything, and it was just really hard. And every morning I'd get up and I would have to, before we left to go down to school, I'd have to throw up in her disposal, but she never knew that. But I'd have to go downstairs, and I was just so sick, and do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
But you had crackers for me and everything, but anyway. But then when we got there, you know, we didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. So I went to the University of Washington to apply for work, and that's when I ran into Pat Brown. Now, Pat and Wally Brown had been friends from when we were first in dental school. Wally and Pat had been there a year before, and they had one little boy. And they let Wally, he couldn't afford to pay for a whole year, so they let him split it into 2 years. The first year into 2 years. So anyway, and Pat happened to be the interviewer at the University of Washington personnel. And so I went in there, I met her, didn't know her, and she said, well, would you be willing to go on, what did they call them, where they just send you out to different departments. And
Secretary pool?
Yeah, just where they ever need some help. And I said, yeah, sure, you know. And so I got some jobs where I just went to different departments. It was really hard because I didn't know what I was doing and stuff. And then we ended up finding out and meeting a church that they were members of the church, Pat and Wally. So that's how, and Pat worked in upper campus personnel.
They were both BYU graduates.
Yeah, and then Pat, there was an offer or an opening for personnel receptionist down at the hospital, and Pat sent me down there on an interview, and I got hired. So it worked out really, really nice because we had just one car. So we went together down to school. The dental school and the hospital were connected.
And the medical school.
And the medical school were all connected there, and the hospital. So I could go with Dad, and then he could go up to school there, and I could go over to the hospital. But I mean, I could just walk. But we had to park down by the railroad tracks and walk quite a ways to get in there. But anyway, but then coming home from the dental school, Dad was in gross anatomy. And with all that formaldehyde and everything, we'd be driving home to our little apartment, which was just close by in the university district. And he'd have to stop the car, and I'd have to throw up in the gutter. And I was sick with all 5 kids that way. Morning and night, I was sick as a dog.
For the first 3 months.
For about the first 5 months. I was really sick, and then once I got over the hump, then I was fine. It's the end of our Dad's junior year. And in the end of August, 1st of September, just before school's ready to start again, his senior year. And we've gone, a bunch of us all went water skiing up about an hour out of Seattle. And someone, Bob Fulkerson or somebody, had a little boat, so they told us we could go and go water skiing. Well, we've never done that. But Dad said, yeah, he'd try. So he's the first one he gets out, and he gets right up on the skis. And he goes around and does fine until
the boat slowed down. Yeah,
till the boat slowed down, and it was trying to turn, and then Dad wasn't a very big guy, but he couldn't. Anyway, it went so slow, and then Dad fell, or just fell in the water,
yeah.
Anyway, it turned out, and Bob Fulkerson couldn't get the boat turned around enough. It took him a long time to come and
I was out there treading water.
To try and pick Dad up, yeah, and he's treading water all the time. Anyway, he finally takes him into the beach, and some of the other guys are waiting there, and they are playing football, and they're throwing the football. So Dad plays with them and throws the football with his right arm, and he throws it, and he cracks.
I said, keep going, and I threw it as hard as I can, and my arm snapped right in half right here.
His right arm.
My right arm.
8-inch spiral.
Just broke.
And Dad could hear it, they could hear it.
My right arm, and I'm in dentistry.
And so they put us in the back of somebody's back. station wagon, but can you imagine what that ride was down the canyon?
Because I knew it was broken.
For about an hour, and there was no blankets, there was nothing to really put him on. And
The two broken pieces are like this, see? Right up here.
And so we take him to the emergency room, and Dad says, I heard it, I'm sure it's broken. And they said, oh no, I think you're okay, but they took x-rays. And anyway, long story short, he stays in the hospital for 8 days. And they put him in traction.
Well, they debated they might have to open it up and put plates in. And I didn't, being my right arm, I didn't want to take a chance at that. So they put a cast down here with a loop on it with a cord that came out. And so you got this broken, so it just pulls into pieces. So you sit like that for 6 weeks and hope it mends. And at night when I slept on bed, I had to sleep with my arm like this, and with a pulley off the end of the bed. And so, of course, I couldn't do any dentistry. So it's my senior year. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to end up repeating this year. Which I didn't do, because I was doing really well. And anyway, they came in and told me that they'll give me,
The dean.
you have to do so many cases to graduate. And you only have so much time, so they gave me extra time in the clinic. So I was ready to go by December.
Well, I'm working every day, so I have to get up and take Scott clear out to Grandma Moss's, then back down to my job, go back out and get him at night and come home. And I came home, and so I was there alone with him. It was dark when I left in the morning and dark when I came home, and I went in, and our what do you call it? Our electrical had tripped. You know, I couldn't have any power.
You broke a fuse.
A fuse, yes. And it was right behind the refrigerator. Well, I couldn't pull it out. So I went next door. See, we'd only been there about a month or so. I went next door, and this gal came to the door, and I said, you know, could your husband come help me pull this out? My husband's in the hospital. And she thought that I was going to have him come over and have fun while my husband was in the hospital. And she would not let him come. And she debated and talked with him and everything. And so finally I said, why don't you come with them? So she did. And so he was able to pull it out, get our power back on, and push the fridge back in. So anyway, we did that for a whole week. And then on Sunday night, there was a fireside. So Pat and Wally wanted to go. So I tended their 2 kids and Scott and put them all in our bed. And I was going to go to the hospital and see Dad that night, but since Pat wanted me to tend their 2 boys, I stayed home. But I went to use my phone. I was there with these 3 little kids. I went to use my phone, and my phone was dead. So I went across the street and down this ravine kind of to this house. They didn't know me, I didn't know them, and asked them if I could use their phone, told them. So I called Dad at the hospital and said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to come because I'm tending the kids. Then I was scared to go back over because I hadn't locked the door. I was afraid somebody would come in. But anyway, we made it through that. So, but anyway, we finally got Dad home, but he was home till December before he could get back to school at all. But the one nice thing was the guy that was this, Richard Tadlock, who was the #1 in the class, said, Bob, I'll take notes for you in class while you're out, you know. And he did. He took them on carbon copy, you know. We didn't have
You didn't have cell phones or
anything like that. So anyway, and he took the lectures and would send them home with me for Dad. But anyway, so...
Because I couldn't write notes.
Yeah, it's his right hand. He couldn't write notes, he couldn't work. He wasn't even at school. He didn't even go to class till about the end of November. But anyway, and so then Dad had... That whole week seemed like a whole month. And so then Dad had been working all summer there. We were in Seattle last summer, and he had been working. He had been chosen out of the dental class to go to Florida to do
The clinic.
the national dental
Students.
national
Dental students.
things. We're having a clinic,
Convention.
a convention, yeah, in Florida.
In Miami.
And so they asked Dad, and so Dad was working on this project to take. So now he's in a cast. he's supposed to leave in October and go down there for that. And he says, I don't know if I can do it. Sure you can, Soderberg. And he got his project finished up, and he flew with his arm, and that I had to stay home because I was working. And it was, so anyway, coming back, so that Saturday afternoon I took him out to the airport, SeaTac Airport, had to drive quite a ways to get him out there, just had Scott with me, and I just thought, oh, I just can't have him go again. You know, he had already been gone a week. And anyway, coming back, I just started to cry. And I just cried, and I just thought, I just can't do this. I just cannot be alone and stay in that place one more week. It was, the house was on a corner, and it was next to a power company, but the forest was right up to our back door, the trees and everything and stuff. And it was just a little teeny place that we stayed on. But anyway, and so when I got home, I was first counselor in the Relief Society at the time, and I called the other counselor. She was a nurse, and she was single, and she had never married, and I just called her that afternoon, and I just said, you know, told her I've taken Dad to the airport, he's going to be gone, could you come and stay with me at night? And she did, till Dad got back about 5 days later. She came and stayed at night, and then we'd both go to work, and then she'd be back there at night. You know, after we both got home from work, she'd come back. And she was just a gem for me, and I just don't know how I could have made it if she hadn't done that. So then we get back. Now it's still in the fall there. I'm pregnant with Brent, so I'm sick as a dog. I'm really sick, and it's just, I am miserable. So, anyway, and I have to drive so far to get Scott and get back to work and back home again and everything. So anyway, then Dad is the treasurer of the dental organization.
It was
his
a
class
dental fraternity
that he was in. He was the only, they asked him to be the
treasurer.
The treasurer.
Collect the money.
And collect the money because they knew he wasn't a drinker. So he told me when he left that night, he says, Jude, I'm going to be gone quite late because I've got to stay and get this money all up. Well, anyway, I'm in bed that night. Luckily, I brought Scott in and had him sleep with me, and I was reading to him. And then I said, you just stay here till Dad gets home. And so we did. And I've got contacts on, so I've taken my contacts out, so I can't see. I'm blind as a bat. Our little house it was supposed to be kind of like a little dining room, and I put, what do you call that? Those.
Well, it had windows like this.
Windows like in our
like this.
in our family room.
We covered them with sticky
What do you call it?
paper.
Yeah, the light wallpaper.
So you can't see through them.
So you can't see through, and that was our bedroom. And the bedroom was right in the front of the house. So there was the bedroom, and then the front door, and then the front room, just a little front room. Okay, so we're there, and we have fallen asleep, and all of a sudden the phone rings, just this real loud, and our phone, you know, was in the other room. We didn't have any, we just had one phone, and I could hear the front door going click. Somebody was trying to get in with the front door. Now, back then, all I had was just the little push button thing to go in. We didn't have a what do you call a safety lock? What do you call them? A double lock. What do you call them?
Deadbolt.
A deadbolt, and that or anything. And that's back then when they could get in with a credit card. All you had to do was slide your credit card in and you could open the door. Well, anyway, when I think whoever it was on the porch heard that phone ring, it must have scared them, and I could hear them go down our wood porch. Step, 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 step. And it must have scared them, and the phone never rang again. But it was my little guardian angel. It woke me up, and it scared whoever was, someone was trying to get in. And so anyway, the rest of the night, I could not sleep. And Dad didn't get home till about 4 in the morning.
Oh, it wasn't that late.
3 or 4. It was very late. And I remember just lying in that bed, luckily I had Scott with me, and just scared to death, so worried about somebody coming in. When Dad was in the hospital with his broken arm, 8-inch spiral, I worked at the hospital, so I was able to go up and see him on my lunch and the break. So that helped. But Dr. Dean Hickey, the dean of the dental school, and Dr. Morrison came up to see him, and Dad was like, what am I going to do? I'm missing a whole quarter of school. And they said, well, we can't just write that off. You've got to be able to make that up, Bob. So when he got back to school in December, they let Dad work through his lunch hour. They
On
were
the patients.
on the patients and help him. And you know, he got caught up in everything, and you know the rest of the story. Dad graduated in the top of his class. So that was just a real blessing to us. But anyway, and then Brent was born May 2nd, and Dad graduated the first of June.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was getting called into the service because of the
Vietnam War was starting.
And so these guys, they said, well, we're going to pull you out of practice if you don't. So
If you don't come in and take a commission as a dental officer, you could be drafted out of your dental practice and have to go then for 2 years. So there was a whole bunch of us, we all took a commission. In other words, I went in as a captain, as a dental officer. And there was about 5 or 6 of us that did the same thing.
But the thing is, they told us, the Army told us that you'd have 6 choices, so we put them down. We didn't get any of them. Our orders.
Anywhere we could go, and
Anywhere we
do
could
dentistry, be a dental officer.
So we got assigned to Kansas. That's how we went back there. So, but anyway, that's another story. Back there, when we were back there, and that's where Keith was born.
But it was nice because we had a nice quarters and we had a nice salary. But we had no salary, see? So we were getting captain's pay. And it had a nice home that's just almost as big as this is.
Well, not quite. It was
about 2/3 of what this is.
Yeah, half of what this is. But it was nice. It was newer housing.
And you're an officer, so you get a lot of privileges.
And we had a little carport, which we had never had before. Our car just sat out on the street, so that was nice. But anyway, that's another story. But and then from Fort Riley, after we were there 2 years, and maybe you know the story, the whole 1st Division was at Fort Riley.
Fort Riley was the headquarters in the United States for what they call the Big Red One. It was the 1st Division.
On Custer Hill.
In other words, all just regular soldiers. And there was,
infantry.
I don't know how many, there's probably 4,000 or 5,000 soldiers on that base.
And then Dad worked at the Irwin Army Hospital, and he did the...
They had 4 different dental clinics on them. It's so big. And I worked in one of those clinics.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. It was great training. It was good experience. And just coming out of dental school, you're kind of slow. You don't learn things. So it was like an internship, really. I even had a chance to go into the hospital and do some work with patients under general anesthesia. It was a good experience.
So we were there for 2 years, and then Dad was ready to get out, and the whole 1st Division was sent to Vietnam July 4th, and Grandpa's discharge date was
the 3rd.
July 3rd. So he
ended up in Vietnam.
He would have been in Vietnam. Missed it by 1 day. He had to send me home with the kids a little bit early, and that was another story. I had to wash all the walls, and that because Dad's at work, and we had a washer dryer there, but then they came and packed us up, which was nice, but then we didn't have disposable diapers or anything. So once they packed up my washer dryer, I had nowhere to go. There was no laundry on base or anything. I was just going to back up to Fort Riley. When we were there those 2 years, we had the commissary, which was wonderful to get your groceries, but there was nothing back in those days like when we were in when we were back in Seattle in school that had like little drive-ins and little places where you could run and pick up something to eat. They didn't have all that then.
They didn't have a lot of it.
They didn't have stuff like that, so we couldn't I don't know how we made it. But so at Fort Riley, we of course didn't have anything, and the next town, closest town, was Junction City, and we could go in there, but you couldn't. There wasn't really anything in there. I never remember going there. Do you?
There were some drive-ins, but they weren't very good.
I can't even remember. Then Manhattan was 10 miles away. But anyway, so that's when I really had to learn how to cook, and I made pies, and I made bread, and I made everything, because we couldn't get it. There just wasn't anywhere where you could go and just go to a grocery store where you could have stuff like that. Anyway, I just thought that was, but then as soon as we got back to Salt Lake and we got mixed in with the family again, and everything, and everybody was going to the store and buying bread and buying a pie. Then I just got right in that groove and did it too, and didn't
do a lot yourself.
Didn't do a lot myself, and that. But back those 2 years, I really had to learn how to do it, and that. But it's amazing that when you have to, you can.
She was a great cook too. She was good.
Since we're talking about Fort Riley, I'll just tell you that's where Keith was born, and we were so glad to have another baby there because he was so cheap. And so, but when he came, Nana was coming out to the hospital, or coming out to Fort Riley to help me with the kids when he was born. He was 3 days late, but the day he was born, he was supposed to come February 2nd. Dad had taken Nana out to the airport to put her on the plane, and she slipped and fell and broke her wrist in just a very horrible break. And he called me and said, "Jude, your mom's not going to be able to come." And I just said, "Dad, you're just kidding me." And he said, "No, I'm really not." Told me, and I just started to cry. And I called Dad over at the clinic and got him on the phone. And he's, "Hello, hello." And I'm like, I can't even talk to you. This is in the afternoon. I could hardly even tell him. And he's like, "Jude, I can't believe it." So anyway, when he comes home, he said, "Listen, I'm going to take you down to the Officers Club for dinner tonight." And so we had never even been to the Officers Club, so he gets on his blues and we go down there. But I get my one of my little kids that live up the street from us that are members of the church. I got them to come and stay with Scott and Brant. And so anyway, and when we leave, everything's just fine, and we come home and Scott is just croaking with this cough. I mean, he hadn't even been sick at all. So I called the doctor, and he's on the phone, and I said, "What am I going to do? What should I be giving him? What should I do?" And he said, "Is that him coughing?" He said, "You take him right to emergency." So we had to take him down to the hospital. They had to put him in one of those tents for a couple days. He was so sick. And here I am waiting to have Keith any minute. Mother's not coming. And so anyway, so then I bring Scott home. After the second night, he was there 2 nights, then I brought him home the next day. And then...
You mean Keith?
No, I brought Scott home from the hospital, and
Scott.
that night I started in labor for Keith. So then I had to call these kids again and said, "No, look, I had a thing with them. If I start during the night, will you come and stay with the other kids?" And so, anyway, I did start during the night, and Captain Marshall kept telling me that they knew I was having a girl. He'd say, "Jude, I know you're having a girl," and he'd tell Dad, "Dad, she's having a girl this time." That's all.
He was a medical officer, an MD, and he was in the same, in other words, we came in because the war was on.
And really, when you'd go, you'd have an appointment, and so would have 20 other ladies. You'd all sit there in this little room, and they had the scales in the middle of the room, and you'd have to just walk up and say, "Okay, Mrs. Soderberg, you weigh," and they'd call it out. And everybody was just dying. But see, I only gained 22. That was the most I gained with any of the kids. So I mean, I barely weighed maybe 120 when I delivered, and that, or 130 maybe at the most, because I didn't have much weight on me at that time and stuff. And they were just dying. They just thought it was awful, and I'd get on and they'd like, "Oh no." But anyway, so in the hospital, when you have them at the Army, they made you stay there 5 days. And so you'd have to go down the hall to get your baby and carry it back to your room to feed it. And if you're going to eat breakfast or anything, you have to go down and get a tray and bring it back, take the tray back. You had to do everything. You had to change your own sheets every day. You had to do everything yourself. So you do that for 5 days, and it really helps you for when you get home. And so...
Of course, we didn't have to pay anything.
Yeah. And there's no phone in your room. Or, I think Dad called Mom and told her, we had the baby, but he had to wait till he could get home and use our phone or something. But anyway, so we're in the hospital, and I've had to have this Gwen Stockton, who was a neighbor down the street, come and help me with Scott and Brent. While I was in the hospital with Keith, I didn't have anybody else to help me. And Dad had to work. He had to be to work. And so anyway, finally, we're just ready to bring him home. And Scott has been to a little preschool thing, and somebody had the chicken pox, and so they sent home a letter that day and said, you know, your kids your child maybe has been exposed to chicken pox. Brought him home, and Scott and Brent both got chicken pox the very next day after I brought Keith home from the hospital.
With a new baby.
With a new baby. And so I had them in bed together, and I had them in tubs together. They were just itching and trying to put that calamine lotion, keep that daubed all over.
They were just covered with
keep them. Oh, they were just covered. But Keith didn't get them. But before he left the hospital, they gave him a gamma shot, and said this will help him not have them as bad if he gets them. Wouldn't make him quite as sick, or it might prevent him from getting them. He did get chickenpox later though, when he was still in diapers, and he was covered. That was a real hard time on him then. But anyway, so that was our experience back there with Nana not
Tell
coming.
them what our hospital bill was
$7. So
for the circumcision.
So anyway, we'll tell you about when we were on Winder Lane, which we lived there from 65 to 70. And we had one car, and I had been taking Dad back and forth to the office. It was getting hard, so we decided to buy a little
Volkswagen Bug.
What color was it?
It was tan.
Tan. Really a cute little bug. And Grandpa went dashing out the door one morning to go to work, and what'd you find?
There were no seats in the front seat. Someone during the night had
stolen
stolen both front seats. Didn't do any damage, and I had to get to work, so I went in and got a stool, set the stool in the car, and then so I could still drive. So I drove to work.
Yeah, but how did you attach it?
Just I don't know. Just
with duct tape?
No, I just sat it in there. I can't remember.
You didn't. You had duct tape and
No, I didn't.
everything else. Well, honey, it would have moved.
No, it wasn't. I can't. It was a chair or something. I can't remember.
It was a little bit, but anyway. And he made it up to work.
Yeah.
And then he made it down to the Volkswagen place after work and asked them if they had any used ones. And
no, I found a used car lot.
Oh, okay.
And they had some, and so we got it replaced.
Yeah, replaced it. Anyway, to go out and have your seats gone. And it was a stick shift. It was a stick shift, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So imagine how hard that was, sitting on a stool with a stick shift. It was kind of funny when we got to Fort Riley. You could tell they were really desperate. We went to church the first Sunday, and it was down at the main Catholic church that
it was just a
non-denominational chapel. And so we just, that's where our word was. And so we're sitting there, and the lady 2 rows in front of me has got her hair up in those little pink sponges. And I'm thinking to Dad, what are we doing here? What has gone on? Anyway, and then this little 89, 90-year-old lady played the organ and missed half the notes and stuff. So anyway, we were there, and
that was the branch meeting.
Yep, it's a little branch. And so we were there and during that week they called Dad to be the first counselor in the branch presidency. And I was called to be the Relief Society president. Now here I am, only 20-something. What do I know about Relief Society? In '67, we moved there at our house on Stringham in '65. And in Marge and Maury, we'd been gone for 6 years. And then Marge and Mother Nana came over to our place on Winder, and Marge said, "Oh, I've got to tell you something that's happened to us." And I said, "Well, what?" And she says, "Oh, it's just really, really special." And I said, she says, we're going there this summer." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Is it to Disneyland?" And so she says, "No, Maury's been called on as mission president of the New Zealand mission." And so they were called like in May, and they left in July.
Their whole family.
And took all 6 of their kids. Rob was just 2 or 3. And they were there for 3 years. So when they got back, they came back to their same house on Stringham Avenue in '69. We moved there in '70, but we hadn't looked there for a house. But anyway, so we had a few years there where Joe and Rob and Scott, Brett, and Keith, the 5 little boys, just had a ball together. and played up down the street and sat up on the roofs and threw firecrackers, and just we had a great time with those kids. Those 5 little boys was really fun. And Lisa wanted to be a part of them so badly. See, she was 3 and 4, and that. And one time the boys were supposed to be tending her, and she was sitting on the kitchen table, and they said, "We're just going to run up to Care's. We'll be right back." And they forgot her. They got up there and got, and here she sits around this table for all this.
You sit on the table and don't move.
And the people, that's what they told her. We didn't know that. Anyway, we get home and she's sitting on the table, and we thought, "What are you doing?" They never came back and got me. But anyway, she loved to be with the boys, and so she wanted to do everything with them, so she didn't want to do anything to have them,
Not water as a group.
water as part of their little party. So anyway, that was fun. But so we lived on Stringham Ave. We had wonderful neighbors. That was when the Broadheads, the Townsends, the Jim and Joan Reynolds, the Parkins, Neil and Judy Maxfield. We just had all these newlyweds that were about the same time we were. But we didn't know that when we moved in. But it all within a few years, we all just kind of had moved into there, and the other people were older. It was very, very young, or the old people like we are now, and so. We had called it the Young Marrieds, and so we'd get together and do something once a month. On Stringham Ave ended up turning out to be just a wonderful place for us to raise our family. It was very good, and we had a lot of fun friends there. We had a trampoline. Got a trampoline the summer that the 3 boys went to Jamboree, and so that was fun for them. But as the time went on, the Brand and the kids would climb up on the roof and jump from the roof to the trampoline. And it's crazy, but we never did have one problem with that until we'd had it quite a few years. And cute Lizzie Corbett across the street was jumping one day, and she went right through it. It had worn out. We didn't know that, and she went right through it. She's scared to death. And we didn't find out until practically she was running across the street. I was home, but she didn't hurt her, as far as we knew. Linda said she was fine. I don't know how she didn't hurt her leg or anything. But so anyway, the trampoline went. But they used to jump off of that trampoline and do all sorts of.
And Brent would sleep out there every night.
And Brent would sleep on the trampoline. He would.
Overnight.
Yeah, many, many nights. I told the kids, when they came home at night, if there was a certain time for them to be in, and if they weren't in, I locked the doors. Well, one night Brent came in late. I don't remember how late it was, and he couldn't get in. He didn't have a key, so he went and slept out in that little shed. It was a little tin shed. What do you call it? A little
storage shed.
Storage shed where we kept the lawnmower and stuff. So he stayed in there. He didn't ring the doorbell or get us up or anything. He slept out in that shed that night and stuff. And so they learned a lesson from that. The worst story is the kids wanted hamsters, and I didn't want those doggone hamsters. But anyway, of course, Grandpa thought it was great, and they went to the store and bought 3 little hamsters or something. But we said, "Now you guys, you can't let this hamster get out or anything." "Oh, Mom, we won't. And they kept it downstairs with their bedrooms and stuff. Then they had blocks, and they'd make little places for them. Then they'd let a hamster out and go and play in it. Well, guess who got lost? And when they told us about it, I about freaked out. And that, but anyway, somehow later, several days later, they found it. But anyway, at another time we were there. I was having some friends for dinner. I can't remember if it was our Young Marrieds or what. For dinner.
It was during the winter.
Yeah, it was during the winter. It was cold. And so I thought, I don't want those stupid hamsters in the house. They smell. And so we thought, well, let's just go put them out in the storage, and then we'll bring them in when they leave, because I was trying to spray the house and get that smell better and everything. So after they left and we got everything cleaned up and went to bed, we forgot about them until the next morning. The kid says, "Where's the hamsters?" We looked at each other.
Just one.
Was there just one hamster?
Yeah, just one.
Oh, there was just one hamster. And guess where?
I went out there and it was frozen.
Ah! Well, they just about died, and we really didn't mean to, but I was sure glad to get rid of them. But that, well, we were gone and had Marcia and Clark come and tend the kids one time. And Marcia was Aunt Marge's third daughter. Apparently, I think this is right, maybe Lisa would know better, but anyway, she climbed out the window of her bedroom and went up the street. But Scott had seen her, I think, and so he followed her. She didn't know that. And then she saw him coming, and she hid behind some bushes and stuff. But he finally found her, didn't he, up around Wyoming Street? And oh, Lisa was going to run away from home. And so it's a Saturday night, and she's been bathed, and I've got her hair up in her little pink spongies. And she's got her sleeping bag, which is like a little Barbie doll sleeping bag, out on the driveway. And she's got a little bag, and she's just gonna run away from home. And I says, okay. So anyway, she was out there on the driveway. Well, that's the night that, I mean, it's still light, it's not even dark yet, that Shirley Hale comes. She's Relief Society president, and she comes and asks me to teach the mother education lesson.
Class.
And I says, Shirley, how can I do that? I've just had this daughter run away from home. And you're calling me to be the mother education teacher?
I got worried, and I went out there, and she was sleeping on the other side of the car in the driveway. Just by, the car was parked in the driveway.
And then there's the time on Stringham where Dad and I are up golfing up at Mountain Dell with somebody. It's a Saturday afternoon, and we've got Annette. Aunt Joyce's Annette is over there tending the kids for us. And so, but we don't have any cell phones, we have nothing. But the kids are outside, it's just a beautiful summer afternoon. And they're up in that wonderful big tree that we had in the corner of the house, in the backyard. In the backyard. And the boys are up there playing with their G.I. Joes and setting bombs off, supposedly, and everything. And then they get knocking each other off of their branches. This is my area for the Army. And anyway, in just teasing, it wasn't any madness or anything. Keith kicks Brent, and Brent falls out of the tree. He falls off at the limb of the tree. It wasn't with meanness, though. But they're all just playing and everything, and Brent just took the brunt of that, and he broke his arm. So Annette goes in, and she puts heat on it. Well, luckily, there's no way they could contact us. And so luckily, we got home just within about a half hour or so after that had happened. And we got some ice on it. You don't put heat on that. And put some ice on that. And
it's like a sprained ankle. You don't put heat on it, you put ice on it.
Put ice. So anyway, then we had to take him down. It's a weekend night, Saturday night, and he had to wait. We had to get Tom Soderberg to come and set that.
Who was an orthopedic surgeon?
Yeah, he was an orthopedic. To set that, but they did end up keeping him overnight, didn't they?
Oh.
Oh, okay. And there's the other time when Brent had his tonsils out there, and they did keep him overnight. I can't remember why. And that was back in the days when they didn't say, yes, you could stay and be in the room with him and that. No, we went home. So after we leave, the next morning when we call up there early and tell them we're coming up, they said, oh, and by the way, your boy had to go back into surgery that night because he was walking down the hall and he fell, and they had
started to bleed.
They had to go back in and redo it, and that.
Well, sutured
again. So anyway, Brent did have to stay in there that time, and that was not a good experience for him. He was scared to death, and I said, why didn't you call us during the night? We would have come up. And but anyway, that's back in the days, the old days.
If we went to the store and we got an ice cream cone, guess whose ice cream cone came off the top and fell on the floor?
Every time.
Several times. He'd go to lick it and the whole thing would fall on the floor.
Every single time. We'd go down to, just down to Valores.
Valores, that's it.
Valores, yeah. There and get ice cream. There was just a little sandwich and ice cream place. And honestly, and it happened every single time. It never happened to anybody else. Grandma and Grandpa Soderberg, great-grandma and Grandpa Adolf and Hazel Soderberg, when Grandma passed away just 2.5 years after Grandpa had bought a piece of property up in Big Springs. It's up just above Camas in the, what was that area called?
The Upper Weber.
Upper Weber. And so Perry and Dad decided, and Helen decided that...
Not Helen.
Well, she was in on it, but she decided she didn't want to go in with the boys and build it. So she was out. So Dad and Perry build the cabin, and you tell them about that, the Lincoln log.
Well, it was a cedar log. It was a kit you bought. It was a cabin you built yourself, but the whole cabin came on a big truck, and it was up on the side of the hill. They brought this truck trailer, barely got it up there, and then unloaded it, and so all the pieces had numbers. It's like you're going to build a little Lincoln log cabin. That's the way this went up. So as the cabin went up, all the rooms went up at the same time. So when it was all up and put the roof on, it was a cabin with 3 bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom, living room, and a dining room. So that was our family cabin on the upper room.
Not the dining room. That kitchen, then Perry had built a table there. But then we had that little front room.
Yeah, but it was separated a little bit.
It's separated by a half a wall, but
Yeah.
Anyway. Brant and our kids, it was really a good experience because they helped work on it with David. Of course, David worked with Perry and knew a lot more, but they had somebody come up and put a well in or something. No,
Septic tank.
Septic tank, yeah. They had that dug for them, and that was done. But then they did the rest and put a nice little, really a cute cabin, and put a nice little, a little railing around it. Well, we didn't have the railing up yet, and Amy was just, it was the Labor Day weekend. And the next day, the kids were going to start school, so we had been up there, and every time they were up there, they were working on something. And the boys just came running across the front porch and jumped off the side and ran on, and Amy saw them. Now, Amy's just barely 5. She sees them do it, and she runs off, but she falls because she's not as tall in that as they
It was
are.
fairly high.
Yeah, it was fairly high. She didn't realize that. And she fell and broke her arm, her elbow. And she comes in and she's got a sweatshirt on, and she doesn't say anything for a little bit, but it's kind of hurt. So what do? I grab her sweatshirt to take it off, ouch, to get her little sweatshirt off, and her arms, Dad said, yeah, she looks like she's broken up. No cell phones again or anything. And so the day Amy started kindergarten with a broken arm, or she had it in a cast, and then that was her first day of kindergarten. So we had to.
She was afraid to tell you that she broke.
So we had to drive down the canyon and everything, and then call to see again on a Saturday night, see if we could get Tom Soderberg or somebody to set it for her, and he wasn't available, so we had Millett.
Oh yeah.
Jack Millett did her arm, and it never did heal real well on her, and that. But also, and I felt really bad about her. She really did hurt it, and then have to drive all the way home, which was an hour, and when you're hurting, and then to go through all that, and then to start school with this broken arm. And another thing that happened up at the cabin that was fun were the snowmobiles. We got 2 snowmobiles with Perry and Jane, and we took turns using weekends and holidays and stuff up there. And then Dad and the kids would pull each other on their skis and make little ski jumps out of the snow. And the snow was quite deep most every year.
Yeah.
And so they had fun, pulling either a sled or pulling the kids, on the snowmobiles.
Or on an inner tube.
Or on an inner tube and that. And we had a big open field just down from where the cabin was. And the kids really had a lot of fun on that during the winters. The summers were fun. This summer, there's a little stream down from the cabin, and the kids would go down and see if they could find something to fish. I don't think there were any in it.
Oh yes, there were.
So Lisa's gone down with the boys, of course, and then she's walking home, and
the fly gets caught in
her finger right here.
You know, when a fish hook has a little extra hook on it.
Those hooks on it.
So it's stuck in here, and so how because you can't back it out because there's a hook there.
It stuck it in her finger right in through here, I think. I mean, it was
in the
really
palm. I can't remember.
palm summer. It was really, anyway, and so the kids are walking up with her, with this, one of them's holding her pole and the other with the
fly in her
fly
hand.
in her hand. Stuck
In her hand. Cut.
Caught in her hand. So Dad has to, they put her on the couch, and Dad has to get a knife and go, and
cut a little-
there's nothing to give
She
her.
couldn't pull it out.
You couldn't get it because both ways.
So I had to cut off the end and then pull it out.
And so he
Without
had,
any anesthetic or
so
anything.
then he had to open up her finger, cut
Well,
that.
it wasn't real big, but it hurt.
No, it really hurt her, really hurt. It was really painful. Nothing to give her to, but we had to get it out. We couldn't, you know. And that was a real unfortunate one too. That was very sad. The kids really did have a lot of fun at the cabin, made little forts up the way. There was a beaver dam up there. They would come sledding through the trees, and then we had a hill, and they would go down this hill, and then they'd have to walk up. There were just a lot of fun times. We played a lot of games up there. One year, I was really brave and had Thanksgiving up there and cooked a turkey up there, and all the trimmings and stuff. And we had dinner up there.
I had this surgery. This is where I had to have half my stomach out because I was bleeding so bad. And so it was major surgery, and I was kind of recuperating. And that following the surgery, it made me cough. And so I'd make these funny sounds, and the kids would all just imitate me. Oh, oh, like that.
I did. It was so, we thought maybe it would be nice. It was a fall day, and we thought, let's go up to the cabin, take
And it snowed.
Dad up to the cabin, and just have a fun time. Let him, put him in a chair, let him rest, get out of the house, and do all this. Well, that worked out great, except the next morning it snowed, and we needed to get out of there. And we're in that stupid
Station wagon.
Stupid wagon that doesn't have front wheel, back wheel, fork wheel.
It's the car that Amy used to take when she'd go on.
And have all sorts of problems with that car.
It's an Oldsmobile station wagon.
And stuff, and so anyway, we hurried and packed up to leave, but when we went down this hill, then we had to go across this little teeny narrow bridge that your car would hardly fit on.
It wasn't teeny, it was just wide enough for a car.
Just barely. And then you could come up the hill quite a little ways. Well, we didn't know if we'd make it. Here it is snowing really hard, and we've got to get Dad out of there. And so it was really sweaty getting that car. And I think the boys had to get out and help push up that hill.
We got it out.
Anyway, we got it out. What we thought what would be a fun little nice fall weekend to get away for Grandpa.
When you have snowmobiles, they break down. They don't work a lot of times. So you got to know how to fix them. You have to change the belts. There's just a lot of work, but we really had a lot of fun with those snowmobiles.
Okay, we'll talk to you a minute about Maxine and why it's been such a family favorite, and that's because when Dad was 4 years old, great-grandpa, his dad, Soderberg, that was one of his favorite places to go, and he learned about it from the people guys he worked with at Kennecott. Is that true?
Yeah.
They went
Oh,
out.
that's okay.
Okay, but anyway, Dad went since he was 4, and it was just a family, and he grew up with that. So when we started our family, that's where we.
And we used to have the old station wagons. That's how
Yeah.
we usually had those big full station wagons so we could get everybody in.
Then we had our car top carrier
No seat belts.
uh-huh.
We put the entire family in the station wagons.
Plus all our stuff, and then we had that car top carrier, that
Yeah.
fabric, that
Yeah, canvas.
canvas one that we tie on the top. But in the early years when we used to go, it was we'd always usually go like the end of June or something. It was sometimes it had even snowed on us there. We would rent places, and first of all we rented these little cinder block places that were right on the river, and it really, in looking back, it was fun, but it was, oh my gosh, they had no heat in them, and the boys would always be, their Levi's and their shoes, socks, and everything, they'd just be drenched from being in the water. Lisa and Amy would be picking up tadpoles and playing along the side and everything, and I just remember during the day just having Levi's over our car, socks hanging over our car, things would turn our few little chairs that we had, the little kitchen chairs, in front of a heater trying to dry things on. We had the kids, we maybe had one bed or a hide bed or something.
We had bedroom with 2 beds in it.
With 2 beds in it, I guess. So some of the kids had to be on
And then a couch out in the living room.
Had to be on the floor in sleeping bags, and oh my gosh, I'm sure there were mice and that in there. But what was hard is we had to take every towel, every wash rag, every pan that we were going to cook with, every single thing. It did not furnish a thing
Yeah.
for us, and we were really loaded when we took all that stuff up. We did that for years and years, and I would try to, you had to have everything planned out, every ingredient, what you were going to have, and see, we didn't have big freezers or anything like that to keep a lot of stuff in, but
Oh, we had a freezer, or a refrigerator.
a refrigerator, yeah, in there, but the fridge wasn't too big, but, so we did take a couple things that we had made at home
Mhm.
to have for dinner. Lasagna was always a great one that would have worked. But anyway, it was a lot of work, it was a time.
We also, Perry and Dad eventually bought an outboard motor, and we'd usually rent a boat and put the motor on the boat, and we'd all go up the river in a boat.
It was a flat bottom boat.
Flat up bottom, you can put everybody in it. And so we didn't fish just in front of Max, we'd go all the way up by the front of the North Fork and fish. So when we used to go, we used to always take a boat with a motor on it. The kids liked that.
The kids had fun with that. And then Perry just kept the boat at his house. And, but we didn't have, he had a truck. David had a truck. And so they could carry the motor and stuff in it. We tried to carry the motor in the back of our car once, and it just didn't work.
Well, you could smell the
And you
gasoline.
could smell that gas, so, anyway, but they would borrow Larry Mansell's, because they lived by them,
Well, they don't.
Dan and Karen, anyway, and take that up. But, going up in the boat was fun, but that's where Amy was too young to fish and was still playing around, so she and I would oftentimes ride up with the boys in the boat, and we'd sit there, and that's when I taught her to play gin rummy. And listen, she was a good little card player. She really learned, and we had fun, and took snacks and drinks and everything in that little boat. It was, I don't know how we all got up in it. Then the boys would get out, of course, where they could wade. Where they could wade, and we'd stay in the boat and eat and play card games and stuff. But anyway, that was fun for us. Brent would be out in the water with his headphones on, listening to some tape. Keith would be out in his
Little canoe.
little canoe, what do you call him, the one man?
What are the Eskimos use, the little boats, single,
Kayak?
Yeah, kayak. That's it.
Yes, and he'd be out there reading a book at times, other times. But we had these little places that were right on the river, and the two little girls could just run and play.
And in those days, the kids were young, and they didn't fly fish, but they could bait fish. So we'd go up and we'd park the boat, and we'd put salmon eggs and just bait fish, and the kids caught fish that way, but not with the fly. That came later.
But then the sweetest memory, one of the sweetest for me, is the boys and Dad had told Lisa when she was 11, when she was old enough and she was 11, that she could go fly fishing with them. And so that summer that she was 11, here they are. They've got all their poles and everything hanging out the windows, and Dad's driving, and we'd see it's just one seat across the front, and here's this little tiny Lisa, and that's her first trip to go fly fishing with the boys and Grandpa with her dad. And that was the cutest picture looking in there. She was just had a grin from ear to ear. And listen, she is a darn good little fisherman. And she'd catch them. And one fun thing was, one time they were fishing, I remember how old she was, but she needed a fly, and Scott said, here, you can have this. And he gave her some ratty old fly that had been half chewed up, and she caught the biggest fish with it that year. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
She caught the biggest fish. And then Dad said, if you catch fish, you got to learn how to clean them. And so, yeah, I couldn't have done that. But anyway, she did, and she is a very good fisherman, fly fisherman.
She loves it.
She loves it, anyway, it was fun. So we just spent every summer going up there, and we only had just about 3 days we could go, because trying to get Dad off work and everything, so we didn't stay very long. One time when we were heading up to Max, finally they shut down those cinder block things, and and built condos up in.
Well, they didn't shut them
Highland
down,
Park.
but a big organization north of Max,
Oh, all right, you're right.
where they built a bunch of real nice cabins,
Yeah.
but they were condos,
Yeah, you're
and you
right.
could rent a whole condo, and they were nicely furnished. And when we switched from Max to those condos, Mom was a lot happier.
Well, we just thought, oh my gosh, how can we ever leave the river? This will never work. We won't like it up there. But it was only 5 minutes
Yeah.
down to the river, and it did work. And they didn't close those down, I remember, but
Oh, they actually weren't.
they probably should have condemned them. But anyway, up there, so then we had a stove, and we had things were a lot better.
With carpet on the floors and
Yeah,
stuff.
and stuff, and so we would rent those.
And they had a little golf course there too.
Yeah, they had the golf course, and sometimes we would rent a place that was on the golf course. One time, who was out there golfing and it hailed, and the hail just covered the 9th hole where we were,
Yeah.
or 8th hole or whatever it was, and then we were inside. We had a lot of fun times up there. It was lots and lots of work, and I got home and did washing for days to try and get all that fishy smell out of all those Levi's and socks and everything. It was a job. A fun time was really when the kids started getting married, and we'd go up and then they'd help. Allison made her wonderful lasagna the first year that they were married, and went up. I don't know if she knew what she was getting into, but anyway, Brent thought she made the best lasagna, and she does. And so.
Well, that year, all the married wives got
They-
waiters and they tried to fish.
Oh yeah, Grandpa gave all the girls waiters for Mother's Day.
Oh, I don't know if it was,
That was what it was for. It was for Mother's Day.
oh, was it?
Yep. And so anyway, we went up that summer, but anyway, then we learned to do things a lot easier, and having these daughter-in-laws help out made a huge difference. Karen would pitch in, and Allison, and Jenny has wonderful recipes, and she still does do some good things. And so anyway, when those kids started getting older, and then we didn't have to take towels, and we didn't have to take all of our pots
Or
and
bedding
pans
or anything like that.
and stuff. It would, a lot of that stuff was, and so it did get, much easier. You still took a lot of stuff, but it got easier, and it was really fun with the kids when they're married, because then they helped out, so much more. Karen, the first time she came up there, I remember that summer, she was just like, oh my gosh, this isn't a vacation, this is a go, go, go. We went and played tennis, we played golf, there was the little clubhouse, and the kids would swim, and we'd do everything. It was just such we did everything, and
And they
Karen.
always went to Yellowstone.
Yeah, we'd always go into
West Yellowstone.
West Yellowstone, that's right. And the kids would get their penny candy. They could go through and have a little sack and put each piece of candy that they want in, and then they'd just weigh it at the end. And then they always got a little Yellowstone T-shirt. They would either have one printed or buy one. They loved to do that, and that was fun. Occasionally we would go to later on they had that bear show. And
They built that big theater.
they built that big
It's an IMAX theater.
IMAX theater there, yeah, and stuff
In West Yellowstone.
in West Yellowstone. Sometimes we'd go through the park, and it was fun. We had to learn though that you have to take your own food with you on your lunch, and that because the lines for the cafeteria wherever you're going to get food were just so huge, and that. But anyway, we learned as we went along, but we had fun, and the kids just loved going to West Yellowstone. And
Anyway, the Max is part of our family, it's just part of our
you
tradition.
can just say Soderbergs and Max, and they're just synonymous. A fun memory for us was in 1972, the summer of 1972. We went up to Max, and Dad and our family, our little kids, just went up. We used to go up with Perry and Jane and Helen at times. Then Helen kind of dropped out. Their family kind of dropped out. But we got up there, and we got a phone call because we didn't have phones. Anyway, the office came and got us and said that Grandpa Soderberg was on the line. And he talked to Dad, and he said, Bob, how would you feel if I took the bus and came up and stayed with you for a couple of days? It was so cute. And Dad said, that'd be wonderful. So he did.
He went.
He went, and I
Come
think,
upon the Greyhound
he
bus
was
lines.
standing outside of the bus terminal because he was ready to go. And he rode the bus up, And he was so excited when he saw us there and got off of the bus that the bus took off and went to West Yellowstone. He realized he had left his fishing pole on the bus. So,
This is my father.
yeah, Adolf. So our dad, and Grandpa, great-grandpa Soderberg,
We drove over to
drove
West.
over to West Yellowstone. And luckily it was still on the bus. They had just barely gotten there, and it was still on the bus. He was able
So he got his
to
pole.
get it. But that was just the cutest pictures that summer, and that was the last summer he died in. That was the summer, and then he died in December 1st of 1972.
Yeah.
And that was a fun memory, and he would just couldn't stand it, could he?
No.
You're kind of like him.
Yeah.
If anybody's going, could I hitch a ride?
Yeah.
As some of you know, while the kids were living on Stringham Avenue, our family, Amy was 3 when we got our first little schnauzer. And we got that schnauzer from Aunt Helen Folsom, Grandpa's sister. And it was just a darling little tiny pup, and Helen had named her Maisie. And when we got the pup, we were really excited, and Dad and I went around and we did kind of like a little treasure hunt for the kids. And we had a dog bone, and we had a bowl, for their food, and a little toy,
And a leash.
and a leash, and all these little things. And so that when they put that all together and came together on this, we had hid them all around the house. When they came together, they put it out and they said, well, what's this all for? And then Dad told them, well, there's a surprise. We're going to go out to Aunt Helen's, and that's when we bought
Got our first schnauzer.
our first little schnauzer from them. And then she got, Maisie got sick. What happened to her? I can't remember. I think, anyway, one of them, we had 3 of them. One of them got hit by a car, and I think that was maybe her.
One of her pups.
Then we had one of her pups, and that was Mitzi, and a cute little thing. And then she was hit in front of our house as one of the kids was going across our street over to Corbett's, her back, and the lady didn't see it, and it was killed outright. And then we got our little Meggie, and I can't remember where we got her from,
Well, she was one of the
Well,
pups.
she was one of the pups, that's
Yeah,
right.
that Mitzi had.
Yeah, she was, I'm sorry. Cute little thing, and they were all pretty much the same, just that light silver gray, tiny. Meggie was the tiniest of any of the pups we had. Darling. And they're all have the same features and stuff about them, but Lisa truly was the best dog.
Well, she helped her
She helped her
deliver
give
her
birth.
pups.
Yeah, deliver her pups. She helped feed them. She stayed home from the cabin one weekend and nursed that little tiny Meggie and fed her and slept with her and everything. She was fabulous and kept that little dog alive. And she was a darling little one. And did I tell you about Amy putting the dog? No,
Yeah, you did. On the stroller.
I did.
But not on video.
Not on video. Okay. I can't remember. There were a couple of the different dogs, but Amy, loved dolls, and the kids all loved these dogs. I think all 5 of them just loved these little schnauzers that we had. And Amy would take them and put them in her little doll stroller, so it was very narrow, and would put it in the doll stroller and with a little blanket around it, and that dog would just sit there with his little paws up, and there was no strap in it, no leash on it or anything, and she would take that dog around the block. And some of the neighbors would come out and they were just floored. They thought it was one of her dolls. And then they just jumped back when they found out it was the dog, but the dog never moved a muscle. None of them ever tried to get out of that. And Amy would take that little dog in that little tiny stroller around it, and it was the cutest darn thing you've ever seen.
We used to play hide and seek with them too.
Yeah, I used to do that, but they were cute, fun dogs.
We
and then-
really enjoyed them. She didn't think she was going to like pets, but she sure liked them.
And then Mitzi got cancer in the neck, and we lost her. And then our little Meggie
That was the one that
is the one that it's hard. I don't want to. anyway, we had gone to Max, and for the weekend we had to leave her. And so Brent left early and came down.
We left her at the vet.
We left her at the vet, I'm sorry. And it was going to be a holiday weekend, so he came down Saturday night. We came down, but he left early that day so he could get her out of the vet, from the vet before we had to leave her on Sunday and Monday for the holiday. And he gets down there, and they're just saying, well, she's not ready to come yet. And they hem hawed and would tell him what to do. And Brent's got that story better than I do. But anyway, he never was able to pick him up. And they said, well, and we'd call, and no, you can't get her today. And we'd call, Monday, no, you've got to wait till the owners get here. And anyway, that was the saddest story of all of them. And when the owners got back, what had happened is while they were gone, this young kid was getting her bathed and all ready for us to pick her up and fluff her up and everything, and they put them in where there's a little dryer that fluffs them up in that, and he just got distracted somehow, I think, and left her in there, and it was just too hot for her.
In other words, she got fried in the fire.
Anyway, she didn't make it out of the dryer.
She did.
Grandpa.
What is your least favorite thing about the other person?
She goes into too much detail when she tells stories. That's the only thing. Oh, there's a whole list. Yeah.
There isn't. I don't know.
He's perfect.
He is. Just putting things away after he uses them instead of leaving everything out. That's probably.
Well, we've been doing this thing for 63 years.
You've got a hang of it.
Yeah, we do.
What's been the secret to your marriage?
Moving away when we were young and having just each other to work things out and depend on. We didn't have family to go and cry to or have help or anything. We had to just work it out and figure it out and work together.
And we don't have any secrets.
No, we're very honest with each other.
Yeah.
We always have been.
What is your very favorite thing about each other?
I like it just to sit and watch TV with the fireplace on and a little light and have Dad just sit and snuggle me in a blanket. I still like that.
Yeah, she does. She always kept a wonderfully clean house, had the children always dressed perfectly and well, and I never had to worry about her doing something. It always got done, usually before I even thought about it. She was a wonderful mate that way.
What's your favorite thing about each other right now?
Oh boy.
Being together. I'll tell you the one thing that it makes it fun. He is fun to live with in a lot of ways. I mean, we're all getting older and we're getting forgetful and all that stuff, but he makes me laugh every day. And you know, growing up, my dad would read the Reader's Digest, and wherever we were, he'd say, "Judy, come here," and he would read us the
Joke of the day.
joke of the day, the things, and I grew up just loving that. And now Grandpa and I both read Pickles in the morning, or Baby Blues, and we laugh at Pickles because Opal and Earl are old, and so are we, and they do funny things, but there's something, honest and truly, there is something that we do laugh about every single day, isn't there? That's the honest truth.
Yeah.
Everybody said when you retire, isn't it hard? I don't know that it was that hard. We were at Kirtland together and then just settled in here.
We enjoy each other's company.
Well, we like a lot of the same things. That's the thing. And I love sports. And that's what I didn't tell you, I used to play tennis and golf, and I played with the women's volleyball with young women and the girls volleyball. I used to love to ski. I used to love to do everything. I can't do those things anymore.
No. We used to have fun golfing together.
Yeah, we did.
Well, we didn't do it a lot, but we'd do it at least once or twice a month.
But
just the two of us.
Saturday afternoons, later on in life, after everybody was gone, we'd just go out late afternoon. We could get.
And if I got a birdie or she got a birdie, we'd give her a kiss.
How many of those do you think we got?
Not very many.
You were safe, were you?
Yeah.
How many times do you think you've kissed Grandma in your marriage?
Gosh. I couldn't count them. Thousands of times.
Did you guys ever make out when you were
Sure.
dating?
Yeah, we did.
We snuggled.
Snuggled?
I don't know if we made out, we snuggled.
When we got married, we knew each other pretty well.
Oh.
There weren't a lot of mysteries. When I went away to work down in Bryce Canyon, I used to just die to get her letters that she would send. Wait for them. And they always made me feel better. If I really want to get some good rewards from her, I take her feet and rub the bottom of them, and she just loves it, don't you? Huh?
How do you get on Grandpa's good side?
Make him some blonde brownies more often.
That's kind of gone down the tubes.
That's kinda gone down.
And there's some things you don't ever do. Did you tell her about this? There are two things she will not stand for. One is sneak up behind her and poke her in the ribs. She
Death.
It makes her cry. It just makes her cry. So I did that once, and that was all I ever did.
Well, it's because when I was home, my brothers would tease me and do stuff like that. And when we would do dishes together and stuff like that, they'd take the towel and, like that, and then whip you with
Have you ever
it.
done that?
And
When you're
that,
drying dishes like this?
and stuff, and whip you, and it hurt.
Oh,
My
never,
an-
never touch your ankles.
Well, I've had so many vein problems in my legs and ankles, and a lot of times just in teasing, Dad would pull me by my ankles or something like that. Never in a mean way, but he would pull, and he had no idea how bad that would hurt him, how bad that hurt me.
She is a real lover.
You are. I'm just glad we've still got each other.
Yeah.
We are very, very lucky to have each other at this time in our life.
And we enjoy
80
being together.
Years, 80 years together. 82 and 84. Plus,
Age, you mean?
yeah.
We've been together 63 years. Plus.
I didn't say it right. We're glad to have each other still.
Yeah.
The old poop and the old poop. The two slugs.
The two slugs.
You,
When we leave this earth, we'd like to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I don't think either one of us is going to survive very well without the other.
We're lucky.
Yes,
aren't
we are. We are.
We've had these many years together.
Can't believe it'll be 63 years this July.
In July.
In June.
In when?
June
What day?
6th.
Oh, you're very good. So anyway, we've had a lot of years. We've had a lot of ups and downs.
But best of all, we've got
Had fun together.
wonderful grandchildren,
Oh.
as one is sitting right here.
Yes.
And
We're very, 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 very grateful for all of you children. All 19 grandchildren. We have been so lucky, and
and
three
three grandchildren,
grandchildren
and a
with
fourth one coming.
the fourth one coming with Libby. So we've got little Cohen, who's 4, and Tessa's 1.5 years, and Olive is 2.5, and she'll have a little brother or sister this summer, and it'll be fun to know. So anyway, we're on our 4th little great grandchild, and as Scott and Karen would attest, they are the greatest part of their life. They have so much fun with them. They're darling. We miss them. We miss the kids that don't live here a lot, but we're grateful for you.
I never dread going to any family parties and meeting my grandchildren. I love to be there, enjoy them all.
That's what makes Grandpa happy.
Yep.
It is. Me too. Me too. So we love you all. We're just grateful for all you kids and want you to know how much we love all of you.
Yep.
And more to come, hopefully. And we will watch you from above someday. Okay? All right. Love you all.
Now they're going to put the pressure on me to name all of our 19 grandchildren and which family they're in. Our first grandchild was, help me, Abby. And so from Abby on down, they all started having kids. And so anyway, Scott and Karen have 2 children, Abby and Libby. And then the next to get, actually Keith was the first to get married.
That's okay.
And then Keith and Jenny have 4 children. Alec, Emily, and Sarah, and Andrew. See, he's pretty putting the pressure on me. So anyway, those are the 4 of the Keiths. And then Lisa and Pat have the twins, Haiti and Rachel, and Eliza, and it's a little short girl with the black hair. And Laura, yeah. Laura was named after her great grandmother.
Grandmother, great.
And then Brent and Allison have 4 children, 5. Their firstborn was Michael, and then Katie, and then this isn't fair.
Nathan.
Oh, Nathan, yeah. Nathan was born at Christmas time. And then, huh? Who?
Lindsay.
Oh, yeah, then the 2 girls came along. Lindsay and Natalie, yes. Oh, and then the Tippett's family. The firstborn was Bridie, and then Connor, and then Mia, and then Ellie. Now, who have I left out?
Yeah, 3 little grandchildren. Who are they?
The great-grandchildren?
Great-grandchildren, yeah.
Abby got married first, or no, they didn't. Yeah, she was the first grandchild to get married, wasn't she? And they have 2 children. Oh, this isn't fair. Cohen and Tessa. And then Libby got married, and they have 1 little girl. She's a pistol. Her name's Olive. And
Cute as a bug.
yeah.
They're all cute great-grandchildren.
Yeah, we
They're
love
just
them all.
darling. They've all got their little personalities, and they're just cute as can be.
Yep.
Are you bored?
You look tired, sweetheart.
I'm not tired.
Yeah.
Morning. My family.
I've seen you guys kiss way too much.
Me being the youngest, him being the youngest. For the School of Pharmacy.
Now wait a minute. This is going down a whole other trail. Honey, we're going in 40 different
Okay.
directions.
All right, don't you want to tell us? You got this turned off?
Yeah.
You don't either. You
I-
don't.
It's off.
No, honey, you don't say your favorite kid.
See,
I know. I wasn't.
Scott.
No, I don't think so. Well,
He was good. Scott was good. He came pretty good, and he stayed good. He really did.
So he was the favorite.
I don't know that he was a favorite, but he was.
he caused the fewest problems.
Yeah, he was. You're not recording that. Okay. We love each other.
Yes, 100%.
100%. I
I've
don't know.
been so lucky.
I've been so lucky.
Yes. Sorry, missed.
We're so stupid.
Yours about as rigid, you can't turn.
I can't even turn. I can't even bend.
Well, we would stand in front of our house when the dates were over and get real close to each other. Never quite had enough nerve. But after about our 3rd or 4th date, I actually leaned in and kissed her.
6
That was our first kiss. I had no idea whether it was a Sunday or
6 months later.
6 months later. 6 months. It took me 6 months. She says it took me 6 months to kiss her. And once we started, we sure did good though. Well, honey, you can't slide on the carpet. That's the lift.
Take it from there.
I just lost my toe. Just go with it. There you go. How did you fall? I fell into it. I was dancing with my wife. This is two 90-year-old people trying to dance with each other. There we go.
Oh, Grandpa. We're too old for this. And a hug.
Oh, and a hug.
And a hug. Just a hug.
How did you fall? Well, my wife fell on me and I was hugging her. I'm going to twirl you. Favorite song. I'm going to slide this way. Pretty hard to do it on the rug, isn't it? No. Okay, that's good.
Here, just